Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
A perfect winter evening meant for rekindling love shatters when Jim's wife, Linda, dances with a stranger, a charismatic football star. He asked me if I was ready, Linda admits later, her voice trembling. One dance leads to a night Jim never anticipated, as his wife disappears into the arms of another man. Betrayal unfolds in the most public way, leaving Jim to grapple with the question, how do you fight for a love that's already walked out the door? Torn between rage and heartbreak, Jim's world spirals into chaos because some betrayals cut deeper than words. January can be a tough month. This year felt especially hard, and February seemed even more so. The worst January ever started with 2 weeks of gray skies and chilly weather, with temperatures in the 20s and a bit of light snow. As the month went on, things took a turn for the worse. A snowstorm was expected, promising enough snow to stop the city in its tracks. By Thursday, many people were planning to take off work the next day, and it was suggested that maybe we should just close the whole city on January 15th. Linda and I had planned a nice evening to lift our spirits, but like everyone else, we woke up to 2 more inches of snow, with more quickly piling up. By mid-afternoon, we were both sent home from work early while we could still get there. The entire city was closing down. Instead of getting ready for our special night, we chose to put on comfortable sweats. Our big evening of dinner, a movie, and dancing turned into frozen pizza and watching Frozen with the kids. The only dancing we managed was helping Emma, age 6, and Tommy, age 4, to their beds, as they complained about the school being closed the next day. Once the kids were asleep, I handed Linda her glass of wine and sighed. "I'm sorry, Linda," I said. "This isn't how it was supposed to go." "It's all right, Jim. It's not your fault. It was nice to look forward to our plans. Plus, I got a new party dress out of it, which I haven't seen yet. You know the rule. You don't see it until I wear it out with you." I pictured how she might look in it. Linda isn't traditionally beautiful, but she has a great sense of style. Everything she wears looks good on her and shows her personality. She started making her own clothes in middle school, and still does when she can't find the right thing in stores. She also makes many of Emma's dress-up clothes. Anyone lucky enough to see her dressed up might think she's the most charming woman in the room, even if they couldn't quite explain why. It's an appeal that draws people in. I remembered when I first met her and how my admiration for her has never changed. I looked at the ring I had put on her finger nearly 10 years ago, shining in the light. "Thank you for saying yes, Linda. I love you." I raised my glass. "To us." "I love you too." "To us," she replied with a smile. We enjoyed a quiet moment together. "Linda, I'm sorry I've been so moody these past few days. It's not because of you or the kids. You deserve better from me. It's just this cold January and all." "I get it, Jim. I'm sorry too. I haven't been my best either. I think the bears in hibernation have the right idea. We really should be resting until spring. We've all been a bit on edge, even the kids. But my coworkers are even more stressed than you are. How about your job?" "Same here." "Well, think about it, Jim. We have each other, the kids, our home, and we know where our next meal is coming from." "Yeah, Wendy's." She laughed. Our first date is a favorite story of ours. I met Linda in college. My parents had to stop supporting me to pay for my dad's health bills, and I didn't want to take out loans. After paying for tuition and books, I had no money left. Linda was a bit better off and offered to treat me or share the costs, but I wanted to save up for a nice place. She said I was being silly and suggested we could spend time together anywhere, even at Wendy's. So that's where we ended up, and the rest is history. We've moved up in life since then, but we still grab Wendy's sometimes for old time's sake. "Seriously, though," I said, "how do people get through tough times without love?" "Sometimes they don't," Linda replied, shivering a little. "Well, we do, and we will." I set my glass down and held her hands. "I'm still happy to spend this evening with you, my love." "Me too, my dear husband." We shared a warm moment and decided we should go to our cozy space together. We ended up enjoying a long weekend, thanks to about 2 feet of snow instead of just 8 inches. Everything was closed, but most people kept their power, and enough folks had snowmobiles to get around if needed. Sure, the kid from up the street didn't have anywhere important to go and was just making noise, but he ran out of gas on Saturday and his parents wouldn't give him more. He quieted down after that. Our kids were thrilled. Mom and Dad were home all day. There was snow to play in, pizza to eat, and movies to watch, not to mention no school. What more could they wish for? Linda and I were pretty happy, too. There was no rush to be anywhere or do anything, so we could enjoy our family time. Food wasn't a worry. Linda and I grew up around here, so we made sure to have plenty ready just in case. Emma and Tommy played so much that they didn't even complain about going to bed, and they slept soundly. This gave Linda and me a chance to enjoy some time together that we usually missed when the kids were awake. However, there were a couple of highlights from the weekend. We had hundreds of movies at home, yet the kids only wanted to watch one, Frozen, over and over again. It's a nice story with good songs, but really. And Linda still wouldn't model the dress for me or even let me see it. Taking me out in it means going out, not staying in, she said with a playful smile. What if I promised to take you out in it? Is that close enough? Nice try, but nope, she wouldn't change her mind. The real world came back early Sunday evening when the snowplows passed through our neighborhood. School and work awaited us on Monday, and there was a lot of sighing from both kids and adults as we prepared. Just before bedtime, Emma and Tommy marched into the living room, all clean and in their pajamas. Big Sister spoke for both of them, standing as straight as she could. Mommy, Daddy, this weekend was the best ever. Thank you for playing with us, watching our movie, and spending 3 whole days together. We love you. With that, Daddy's girl climbed into my lap, and Mommy's boy jumped into Linda's. They gave us sweet hugs and switched parents to do it again. I looked over at Linda, and her eyes were as misty as mine. We love you too, I managed to say. We're so happy that you're our kids. Linda and I didn't do anything special that night, but we couldn't stop smiling the next morning, and neither could the kids. January returned, though, and the long weekend became just a nice memory. Even our usually calm kids were a bit restless. Linda and I had just settled together on the sofa after finally getting Emma and Tommy to sleep when Linda's phone rang. I sighed and mumbled something. It's Dee. I need to answer, she said apologetically. We had a small group of 5 couples we spent time with occasionally. Since we met as couples, there were no awkward stories about being single. We all shared the same views about loyalty. It was simple. This way, when we went out, we could dance with each other's partners if we wanted without any worries. We were closest to Dee and her husband Dave. She and Linda were almost best friends. Linda made a gesture to say she would keep it short as she answered the phone. I could see Linda getting more excited as she talked with Dee. She was nearly glowing when she ended the call and snuggled into my lap. So what was that about? My face couldn't help but show her smile. Well, dear husband, she grinned. I know you think this long January has gone on just about long enough. I'll drink to that, I said, reaching for my glass of wine. Linda gently held my wrist to stop me, guiding my hand to rest on her waist. Much better idea. Well, we've been saying this has been the worst January ever. That didn't match the smile on her face, so I pointed it out. That's because Dee had this wonderful idea. The last day of the month is on a Friday. What if we all came together, found sitters for the kids, had a nice dinner, then danced at a fun club, and booked hotel rooms for the night? That way, we could relax without worrying about driving home and end this month on a high note. What about getting back to the hotel after the club? Don't we need to drive? I'm the one who usually points out problems in a plan. It's part of my nature, shaped by my job. That's the best part, Jim. You remember the Madison Uptown? We've eaten there before. There's a club nearby where some of Dave's co-workers go. They'll have a live band Friday night, and if you eat at the Madison, there's no cover charge. Plus, Phil and Jane have already arranged for Mrs. Porter to take care of their kids overnight, and she's okay with ours too. I need to think about this. I didn't really need time to think, but I hoped Linda would use one of her classic ways to convince me. Instead, she playfully tossed a pillow at me. Okay, I've thought about it. I'm in. But there's one condition. What's that? Linda looked at me with curiosity. I held her face gently in my hands and looked into her blue eyes. You wear the dress you bought for our date night, the one I still haven't seen. You got it. Her voice was sweet, and her eyes sparkled with fun. It was a blue dress. I can't say what kind of blue it was. I only know a few colors. But whatever blue it was, it made her blue eyes even more beautiful. The dress had long sleeves and a high neck, and the skirt came below her knees, yet it was special. The skirt had a nice flow that caught attention as she walked. When she danced, it moved gracefully. The fabric fit her shape perfectly. Linda smiled as she elegantly walked down the stairs to where I waited, and I was speechless. "Dear Jim," she said softly. She lightly touched my chin, making me swallow hard and lose my words for a moment. "It's still just me, the same person as always. You don't have to compliment me, though I do appreciate it." I shook my head, finally finding my voice. "You don't understand. You have no idea how beautiful you look. I struggled to find the right words. I took her hands in mine, leaning down slightly. When I looked up, I saw a sparkle in her eyes and a slight smile. She got it. The 10 of us met at the restaurant, which was busy on a Friday night. Thankfully, we had a large table reserved, so we could all enjoy a meal together. We laughed and talked, happy to be together as we celebrated the end of January. Linda was the brightest person in the room, and I must have complimented her several times. I found ways to lightly touch Linda's arm or shoulder, and she responded warmly. It looked like it was going to be a night to remember. After we checked into our rooms, we got ready to go to the club. Neither Linda nor I handled alcohol well, so I usually drove. But tonight, I was relieved I wouldn't need to. While I cared about my friend's safety, I was excited about spending time with Linda. She seemed to feel the same. She went to our room for a moment and came back with a playful smile. "We don't have to stay at the club long, do we?" she whispered as we walked. I could tell she wanted some time alone with me. I smiled back. "Your choice." She gently nudged my arm and wrapped her hands around it. We had a table reserved for 10, which turned out to be a good idea. Many others were celebrating the end of January, and they couldn't help but notice the 5 women in our group. "You're getting a lot of attention," I whispered to Linda. "You really are the brightest person here." "Oh, you," she said, looking up with a smile. "You don't have to say those things, but I like hearing them." "But I want to," I replied. "It's just the truth." I knew my reasoning wasn't perfect, but at that moment, it didn't matter. She understood, and her smile grew even wider. Neither Linda nor I were great dancers, but we moved confidently and enjoyed the atmosphere together. We didn't care much about how we looked. We were there to enjoy each other, not to perform. So I danced with Linda, taking breaks for hot wings and a drink. When I went to get more wings, I saw Dave asking Linda to dance. I heard her answer. "I'd love to, Dave, and I would another time, but I want to make tonight special for Jim and me. I'm only dancing with him tonight." Was I proud? Happy? Absolutely. I handed out the wings and whispered to Linda, "So, is it time to go yet?" "Right after you brought a fresh plate of wings? What are you thinking? We'll both need our energy for what I have planned." She gave me that knowing look and squeezed my hand under the table. A few minutes later, the band took a break. In the quieter moment, we heard laughter from another table and turned to look. "Hey, isn't that Mark Lavaliere?" Phil leaned around me to see. It is, Dee said excitedly. Mark Lavaliere was the star tight end on our city's football team. Unlike many on the team, he lived here year-round. He was well known not just for his sports career, but also for his kindness in the community. Mark became the main topic at our table. The guys talked about his sports achievements, while the women complimented his kind personality. "It doesn't hurt that he's quite handsome either," Dee added. Linda and I both knew who he was, but we were focused on each other at that moment. We held hands under the table, letting the conversation float around us. "Hey, you two, get a room," someone joked. Linda and I exchanged glances. We hadn't done anything too romantic. I had just helped her with her food so she wouldn't stain her new dress. Besides, we already had a private space. We were saved from feeling awkward when the band started playing again. "Shall we dance here or go upstairs?" I whispered to Linda. Before she could answer, Jane interrupted. "Look! He's coming this way!" Indeed, Mark Lavaliere had left his table and was approaching ours. I couldn't help but notice how the women at our table all straightened up, practically begging for his attention. Linda looked down, holding my hand a bit tighter. "Hi, I'm Mark. Would you like to dance?" He stood beside Linda, offering his hand. I felt Linda gasp and let go of my hand. I watched in surprise as she turned away from me, took Mark's hand, and stood up gracefully. "Hey, man, now my feelings are hurt." I thought she was just dancing with me tonight. Dave teased, smiling. "Yeah, that's what I thought too," I replied, trying to hide my annoyance. "Relax, Jim. It's just a dance," Jane said, trying to calm me down. I wanted to trust her, but a worry lingered. The band played a couple of lively songs, and everyone watched them dance, including our table. Mark was a great dancer, much better than I was, and Linda looked happy. They moved well together. "Don't they look good as a pair? Come on, Jim, let's join them," Dee suggested, trying to take my mind off things. "Thanks, but no," I replied. The next song was slow. I watched Linda lean into him as if it felt right. It seemed like he knew what he was doing. Mark whispered something to Linda, and she smiled back at him. They were dancing at a respectful distance. As another slow song played, I noticed the band leader watching them closely. Mark smiled while holding Linda, clearly enjoying the moment. I had seen enough and stood up, feeling Jane touch my arm gently. "Wait, Jim. Let her have this. Don't ruin it for her." I released her grip and looked at Linda's face. It was clear she was happy where she was with no interruptions. I sank back into my chair. Finally, the song came to an end. Mark nodded at the band leader and the music picked up speed. He and Linda left the dance floor, exchanging happy smiles but not touching. Linda gave him a bright smile before turning toward our table. It's hard to tell the difference between a woman's best smile and her second best. If you don't know her well, you might not notice at all. As Linda came closer and our eyes met, her best smile faded just a little. In that moment, I sensed something was wrong. "I keep telling you that you're the most beautiful woman here," I whispered as I helped her into her seat, holding her hand. "Should we head back to our room for the next dance?" For a second, I thought I saw doubt in her eyes. Her hand seemed to shake, but she quickly hid it and looked away. "I'm sorry, everyone. I need to go to the restroom," Dee called out from across the table. "Linda, can you come with me?" Linda looked at me with an apologetic glance. "Sorry, Jim." "I could use a little break, too," she said as she stood up, leaving my question unanswered. The conversation quickly shifted to why women in groups always go to the restroom together. I started to wonder why my friends were so interested in that topic when Dee returned alone. "Where's Linda? Is she okay?" I asked loudly. "Calm down, Jim," Dee replied with a smile. "Linda is fine. She just had something to take care of. You don't need to worry. She can manage." My friends started teasing me for being so concerned about Linda. It's true. I worried about her just as she worried about me. After 5 minutes of joking, I had enough. I stood up and walked to the bar, taking an empty plate with me as an excuse. I walked up to one of the bartenders. "Excuse me, my wife went to the restroom about 15 minutes ago and hasn't returned. She usually doesn't take that long. Could you please check on her?" The bartender looked at me with some doubt, but then I had an idea because of the plate I was holding. The wings are great, and she enjoys spicy food, but sometimes it can upset her stomach. I just want to make sure she's all right. Her name is Linda. Here, let me show you a picture. I set the plate down and pulled up Linda's picture on my phone. The bartender started to look a bit more understanding when Dee spoke up beside me. "She's fine. No need to check on her." Dee was looking at the bartender. "It's all okay. I'll handle it." She put a $5 bill on the counter. I noticed the bartender glanced at me with what seemed like pity as she took the money. "What? Why? But she went to the restroom with you." I was totally confused. "Jim, she's not in the restroom. She has left the club." I quickly looked around the bar, then at our table, and finally down the hall toward the restrooms as I started to understand what had happened. Driven by a sudden urge, I ran out the front door just in time to see a Honda car pull out of the parking lot. It was driven by a big man with a dark-haired woman in the passenger seat. The man was clearly not in shape, and the woman didn't look much better. At that moment, I heard a loud engine start up, so I instinctively ran toward the sound. I turned the corner of the building just in time to see a shiny black Corvette speed out of the parking lot and onto a side street, tires squealing. I fumbled for my car keys, wanting to follow. But then I remembered I had left my jacket and keys back at the table. Instead, I reached into my other pocket, took out my cell phone, and dialed Linda's number. The phone rang and rang until it went to voicemail. I hung up and tried again. This time it went straight to voicemail. Clearly, she had turned off her phone. Feeling frustrated and confused, I went back inside the club and ran into Dee, who was clearly looking for me. "Okay, Dee, what is going on?" I asked. "I was trying to tell you before you rushed out. Linda is gone. She left the club." "Left? Without me? Why? What's the matter? Why didn't she tell me? Where did she go? Is she okay?" I still didn't understand. "Let's go to the end of the bar where it's quieter." I followed Dee to a more private corner at the end of the bar. She looked me in the eye. "Jim, Linda cares about you and the kids more than anything else, and she always will. But she is spending tonight with Mark." I stood there, shocked, as my thoughts raced. I thought of Linda in her lovely blue dress and remembered the moments we had shared, and my frustration grew. "So on what was meant to be our special night, she chose to be with someone else," I said, looking at Dee with anger. "Jim, she hasn't left you. She'll come home tomorrow, and you will have many more special nights together. She didn't even have the courage to tell me herself. She just disappeared. Jim, listen to me. She hasn't gone for good. Then where is she? She isn't with me now, is she?" I raised my voice, not caring who could hear. "Please calm down. People are noticing. I know this is hard, but it's just for tonight. Linda knows, we all know, that you're the only one for her, and you will always be." "Yeah, and we all know that the good guy doesn't always win." "Jim, it's not like that. You're making too big a deal out of this. It's only one night. She'll be back tomorrow, and everything will be just like before." I wasn't feeling as hopeful as she was. "So what part did you play in this? You didn't really need to go to the restroom, did you? My wife asked you to keep me busy long enough for her to leave, didn't she?" "Yes. She asked me to do that because she didn't want you to feel awkward. She also made me promise you that she loves you and will always return to you." I would remember this night for a long time. More like she didn't want me to make things difficult as she walked away to spend the night with someone else. Didn't it cross your mind to remind her that she has a husband and a marriage, and she might lose them over this? Dee looked me in the eye. "No, it didn't. I know she won't lose you over this. You're too good a man to let that happen. I told her how fortunate she is. She's lucky because the man everyone wanted her. But she's even luckier to have a husband who loves her enough to get past his hurt feelings and not make this a bigger deal than it has to be. You know she'll do what it takes to make it right. What if it isn't possible to make it right? What if there's no way to fix this? Jim, I know how much you love Linda and how much she loves you. This doesn't have to be a big deal. It's just one night, a one-time thing, compared to all the years and love you two have shared. It isn't a big deal unless you make it one. I know she'll come back to you and that you'll be okay eventually." Dee spoke gently, but with confidence. I struggled not to show my frustration with her viewpoint. "So if someone else had chosen you, as you hoped they would, you'd have done the same thing?" "I would," she replied firmly. "Does Dave know that?" "No, and he doesn't need to because I don't think it will ever happen," she said softly. "Maybe I should tell him." "Jim, please don't. Don't think like that. I know you're hurting, but that won't help. Come back to the table. Let us take your mind off it for a while. You haven't danced with me at all tonight." She smiled warmly at me. "I wanted to dance with my wife, but thanks to you and her, that doesn't seem to be an option now, does it?" I turned away and walked back to our table. The chatter at the table stopped when I arrived. The turned heads showed it clearly. All our friends knew what was happening. As I sat down, I noticed the empty chair beside mine, and the reality of what Linda had done weighed heavily on my heart. I couldn't stay here. My night was over. My marriage felt shattered. A lump formed in my throat and I blinked back tears. I had to get out of there right away, so I grabbed my jacket and keys and headed toward the door. Of course, it wasn't going to be that easy. As soon as I turned around, I saw Dee with a frown on her face, and standing behind her was her husband, Dave, looking annoyed. "What are you doing, Jim?" she asked. "I don't know, Dee, but I'm not sticking around here. I wouldn't want you to make my night any worse than it already is." "Come on, Jim. You'll be okay," Dave said as he helped Dee to a seat. I wanted to tell him what Dee had said and ask if he was all right, but I couldn't get the words out. I guess I was still trying to be the good guy. I would need to work on that. "It depends on what you mean by okay." A few nervous laughs followed. "I mean, yes, that wasn't a good choice, but you two will be fine, right? You're not going to split up over this, are you?" "I don't see why I shouldn't," I replied calmly. I heard a gasp from around the table. "Why is everyone acting surprised?" I continued. "We all know how we feel about betrayal. It's one strike, and you're out. We agreed on that long ago." "But Jim, it's Mark Lavaliere," Dee interrupted. "So what? I don't care who it involves. If it isn't me, that's it." "Jim, what about your kids? We all know how much you love them and how much they need you. Think of them before you do anything." Jane's kids were about the same age as mine and were best friends. "You mean, like my wife is thinking about them right now? Well, that's why you got a sitter, right? So you wouldn't have to think about your kids." I think Dee meant to be funny, but it fell flat. "Come on, Jim. It's just one night. It's an opportunity she might never have again. You wouldn't end things with Linda over one night." "Why not?" I glared at her. An uncomfortable silence followed. "Jim, try to think of it this way. Maybe it will help." Jane tried to sound understanding. "What if someone you looked up to was here tonight? Say they chose you out of everyone to spend time with and then they wanted to keep that going. Can you honestly say you wouldn't be tempted? Can you honestly say you would turn them down?" The pleading look in Jane's warm brown eyes usually worked, but not this time. I stood and looked down at Jane. Yes, I would be tempted, but I would turn them down. You see, I have a wife, and I don't want to hurt her. At least that's what I would have done before tonight. As if defending Jane, Dave stood up and walked toward me with a self-righteous look on his face. "Jim, you don't have to make this hard. This is only a big deal because you're treating it that way," Dave said in a condescending tone. In that moment, all my restraint slipped away. I pushed past Dee and stood right in front of Dave, looking directly at him. "Listen, I don't need any advice from you about being rude." Then, with as much firmness as I could, I added, "If you care about yourself, you'll sit down and hope you haven't gone too far." A light poke in the chest made Dave back away until he hit his chair and sat down, staring back at me with wide eyes. I might have lost my cool a little. There was another long silence. I glanced around the table at my old friends, all of whom were supporting my wife. At that moment, I truly hoped I wouldn't see any of them again. I took a $20 bill from my pocket and placed it on the table. "This will cover my bill. Since you're covering for the person I came with, you might as well cover her bill, too." I turned away and walked out of the club. My thoughts were racing as I walked back to the hotel. The happiness I felt earlier had turned into deep sadness. Linda and I were supposed to be walking together, holding hands and joking with our friends about their plans for the night. Instead, I was by myself. Alone, I rode the elevator, trying not to think of the times Linda and I had shared in other hotel elevators. Alone, I entered what was meant to be our room. Alone, I faced the disappointment of our special night. I turned on the light and closed the door behind me. I suddenly felt completely worn out. I dropped my coat on the floor and made my way to the bedroom. There was a chocolate on each pillow. In the middle of the bed was a set of nightwear I hadn't seen before. They were dark blue with black lace. I could picture her wearing them, with a warmth and charm that was uniquely hers, and that had been mine until tonight. Holding these delicate items in my hands felt like a way to bring her back. But it didn't work. I broke down in tears. My wife, my partner, my best friend, had been taken from me by another man. He had casually pulled her away from me, as if he had every right. He didn't care about what she meant to me. All he saw was someone to enjoy for a night, and she let it happen. I felt I didn't matter enough to her to make her resist at all. It was as if she thought he had more claim to her than I did, despite nearly a decade of being a faithful, loving husband. Yes, it was supposed to be just one night. But what would that night leave in her heart and mind? What could I ever do that would compare to someone so charming and admired? I must have drifted off to sleep. When I woke up, it was almost 1 o'clock, and I was slumped on the bed with a sore back and a tear-stained piece of clothing in my hands. I looked around the room. I remembered what we had hoped for this place. I knew I couldn't stay there. Home? In our bed? No, that felt even worse. Another hotel? That seemed silly since I had already reserved a room. Maybe one of the kids' rooms could work instead. I packed Linda's suitcase and my own again. I ate the chocolates, no point in wasting them, and tossed the damp clothing into the trash. They felt empty without Linda, just like our special night. I checked out of the hotel and drove home. The car was so quiet. What was meant to be a romantic night to celebrate our love had turned into a nightmare beyond anything I could have imagined. As unmanly as it sounds, I felt like pulling over and crying. The pain was overwhelming. That's when I realized what I was doing. I was just reacting. From the moment Mark had asked Linda to dance, I kept reacting instead of taking charge. Instead of stepping in when he got too close to my wife, I just sat there, waiting for Linda to stop him. When Dee told me Linda had left the event, I rushed to chase them in the parking lot. Even then, instead of taking control, I was simply following what Mark, Linda, and Dee expected of me. I was acting like the weak and unsure husband they had made. Who was this guy? He wasn't me. I was always the leader, the one who took charge and solved problems, especially when things got tough. At work, people came to me for help with problems so often that I was promoted to supervisor and then manager, even ahead of older colleagues. Among my friends, I was the one who helped plan events to keep things fun and safe. Within my family, I was the go-to person for advice, the parent our kids turned to for help, and in my marriage, I was the responsible one. I carefully considered everything and planned ahead to protect our family from problems. Linda was the spontaneous one. I was the planner. She felt deeply. I solved problems. And this was definitely the toughest problem I had ever faced. When that hit me hard, I made 2 promises. First, I would no longer just react. And second, the way to find my strength again led back to the club where my troubles began. With a quick turn of the steering wheel, I took control of my life again. When I got to Morrison's, the bartender was telling customers it was time to leave if they hadn't found someone to spend the night with. As I approached the bar, she recognized me from earlier. "You're the guy from tonight, right? The one whose wife left with Mark Lavaliere," she said. "Yes, that's me." "I didn't think I would see you again. Would you like a drink? It's on the house," she offered. "Can you tell me if he comes here often?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "It's one of his usual places." "So he's done this before?" I asked. "Pretty much. Almost every week when the team is in town." "Does he go after married women?" "Usually," she said, sounding unsure about our talk. "And no one ever stops him?" "Look, he's a big guy with a lot of money and he tips well. I don't like it either, but what can I do?" she admitted sadly. "Do you know where he lives?" I inquired. "Sorry. Even if I knew, I wouldn't say. If you do something reckless with that info, I could lose my job." "I really need my job," she said honestly. "It's tough for you." A thin voice chimed in from the other side of the bar. The bartender gave a disapproving look to the man, making it clear his comment wasn't welcome. Just as I was about to leave, a young woman approached me from across the bar. "I know where he lives," she said. "It's a big gray house that backs up to Meadowbrook Park. It's almost like the park is in his yard." "Are you sure?" I asked. She looked down, and I sensed she knew more than she let on. "Thanks," I said as I turned to go. I knew the area well, but an hour later I was still driving around without any luck. Just as I was about to give in, I spotted a small group of homes hidden behind a tall stone wall. As I turned the corner, I found myself in front of a pair of open iron gates. Inside were 6 large houses arranged in a semicircle. All seemed to be similar in size and set comfortably on their lots, except for one notably large gray house at the end of the circle, where a black Corvette was parked. I turned off my headlights and quietly parked near some bushes to keep my car hidden from sight. The house was dark, with just a little orange light coming from an upstairs window, which I guessed was the master bedroom. I got out of my car and walked toward the house, thinking about the strange events of the evening. When I reached the front door, I rang the doorbell. I heard it ringing inside, but no one answered. I knocked again on the big wooden door until I saw a light come on inside, and then the door opened. Standing there, looking a bit messy, was the homeowner. "What do you want?" he asked sharply, recognizing me from a quick meeting we had. "I want to talk to Linda, my wife. She isn't here. She is here. Let me speak with her." I heard some noise coming from inside, and he turned his head and nodded. "She doesn't want to talk to you." "Maybe. But I think you want me to talk to her, don't you?" I said, seeing his annoyed expression shift to one of confusion. "And why would I want that?" he replied. "Because," I explained, "if you don't, I will have to call for help. I'll say she left the club without saying a word to me, and I'm worried about her. The authorities will come to check on her, and even if everything is fine, that will still be on record, which isn't good for you while you're working on your contract, is it?" I noticed him thinking about what could happen next. "Wait here," he said, leaving the door a bit open. I could hear a quiet talk happening inside. A moment later, the door opened again, and there was Linda, wearing a nice robe that made me worry about how she felt. "Jim, what are you doing here?" she asked. "I came to get you, Linda. Please get your things so we can leave," I said, trying to sound confident. "I'm not ready to go. Mark and I aren't done, and I've decided to stay the night." "He'll make sure I get home tomorrow," she replied, breaking my heart again. But I pressed on. "I don't know if our marriage can handle this, but I'm asking you, Linda, please come home now. If you do, I'm sure we can work this out privately and keep it from affecting our kids and families. Jim, the only ones who need to know are our friends, and they don't think it's a big deal. Just ask them." "Linda," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt, "if we're not careful, this could get out of hand and we don't know where it will go." "I'm sorry, Jim. Go home, and we'll talk tomorrow." With that, she stepped back inside the house and closed the door. It felt like she had also shut the door on our marriage. As I stepped away from the porch, I realized her choice had pushed me to think about my next move. Hurt and upset, I felt eager to act. I pulled out my cell phone from my pocket to check that the voice recorder was still running. I walked back to my car, but instead of getting in, I opened the trunk. Speaking into the phone, I calmly described what I was doing. "I have opened the trunk of my car and am taking out my emergency bag. From inside the bag, I am pulling out a small tool and a wrench. I am now putting the bag back in the trunk." I walked over to his car while still talking into the recorder. "I am now using the tool to quietly check the tires of Mr. Lavaliere's vehicle. My goal is to create a small problem without causing any lasting harm." Once I finished, I returned to my car, put the tool back in the bag, closed the trunk, and locked the car. I stood by the vehicle and called Derek Allen, an old friend and lawyer I sometimes consulted. As expected at this early hour, my call went straight to voicemail. "Derek, it's Jim. Sorry for the early call, but something strange has happened. I'll explain when we meet. Take care." I then dialed 911 inches and waited for a response. "Hello, this is 911. What is your emergency?" "Hi. I'm near a house and there seems to be some suspicious activity with a car. Could you send someone to check it out?" I gave them the address and ended the call, choosing not to stay on the line until help arrived. Finally, I prepared to leave the scene, making sure everything looked neat. My actions were careful, meant to send a message without going too far. To cover the costs of the issues, I also placed a check for $500 made out to Mr. Lavaliere under his windshield wiper. I then swung the wrench and cracked the window. As expected, the car alarm started to sound. I looked around as lights began to turn on in Lavaliere's neighbors' houses, but there was no movement inside his own home. I reached into the car and honked the horn. More lights came on in the neighborhood, and eventually Lavaliere's porch light switched on. Still in his bathrobe, Lavaliere rushed out of his front door toward me, with Linda appearing behind him, covering her mouth in surprise. "What are you doing?" he yelled, launching into a series of insults. As he closed the distance, he shared how he planned to confront me. When he was about 15 feet away, I held up the wrench, making him pause. "That wrench isn't going to stop me. Once I get to you, you'll see what I'm capable of," he warned. Waving the wrench, I replied, "Listen, Before you come any closer, just remember that I have the right to defend myself. Right now, this wrench is how I can do that. All I need to do is bring you down a bit, and you won't be able to continue. So think about whether this is really worth it." By then, Lavalier had completely stopped, confusion on his face. He was very upset and paced back and forth, trying to think of what to do next. Linda ran across the lawn, probably hoping to calm things down. Just as she got close to Lavalier, I heard a loud siren and saw the lights of a police car coming into the driveway. I put down the wrench and raised my hands. 2 young officers, a man and a woman, got out of the car, ready for anything. When they asked what happened, I quickly admitted to damaging Lavalier's car. The officers talked to all of us, and the woman officer asked me to turn around. She told me she had to arrest me. As she put the handcuffs on, she quietly said, "I'm really sorry about this, but I have to do it." "I understand," I replied. "I actually hoped you would." I then asked her to look at the check under the windshield wiper of Lavalier's car and to include it in her report. Meanwhile, the male officer was trying to calm Lavalier and comfort Linda. The female officer left me by the police car and walked back to the Corvette. I saw Linda standing alone, watching the officer. The officer lifted the windshield wiper, took the check, and looked at it with a puzzled expression. Linda missed the officer pulling out her phone to take a picture. When the officer returned, I was placed in the back seat of the police car. I caught a glimpse of Lavalier looking satisfied and Linda looking worried. As the car drove away, I noticed Linda leading Lavalier to the Corvette and pointing at the check I had left. As we drove off, I saw Lavalier's face change to disbelief when he ripped up the check. Soon enough, I found myself at the police station, directed to a payphone for my one call. Most people might call a family member, but I asked the operator for the number of the night desk at our local newspaper. When I got through, I told a tired-sounding woman I was calling from jail with an interesting story about a local celebrity. When I mentioned Mark Lavalier's name, she immediately became interested. Over 5 minutes, I shared a short version of my story and suggested she send a photographer to his house to take pictures of the damaged car. She asked for my phone number and said a reporter would contact me the next day when I was released. I was then lined up with 6 other people, most of whom seemed drunk, and walked into a large room with no windows and harsh lights. I lost track of time. Unlike my cellmates, I drifted in and out of a light sleep without ever fully resting. I was surprised when a big officer unlocked the door and signaled for me to follow him. I was processed out, and about an hour later, I found myself in the lobby of the city jail, looking at my lawyer's concerned but friendly face. "Come on, Jim," he said. "You're probably hungry, so let's get something to eat and you can tell me what happened." I'm not a big fan of Denny's, but it was nearby and they have unlimited coffee. So with coffee in hand, I shared my story with Derek. By the time I finished, he was trying to keep from shaking his head. "So, do you know what you want to do, Jim?" "Well, I have no idea how this will turn out, but I need to start the divorce process, at least to take charge." Derek nodded in agreement. "I don't do family law, Jim, but I know one of the best divorce lawyers in the state, and I think she would be great for your case. I'll call her this afternoon and see if I can set something up for you." I thanked him and asked if I could get a ride back to my car. When we arrived, I saw Lavalier's Corvette being loaded onto a flatbed. I thanked Derek for his help, hopped into my car, and drove home. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon by the time I reached home, and I thought Linda would be there when I arrived, but it was surprisingly quiet when I walked into the kitchen. I carried my bags to our bedroom and quickly realized that Linda had not come home. Wanting to wash away the stress of the day, I took a hot shower, put on clean clothes, and went to the living room where I fell asleep almost right away. It felt like mere moments, but almost 2 hours later, I woke up to the sound of a key turning in the front door. "Jim? Jim, I'm home." Linda sounded just like she always did when she returned from shopping. She closed the front door and turned on a light. I turned to look at her. She appeared just the same. The blue dress still suited her just like it had the night before. Her dark hair fell down her back the same way. Her posture, her face, the rings on her fingers were all unchanged. It was as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't been involved in things that might be seen as betrayals. I expected some sign of what had transpired, some hint of regret, but there was none. What were you thinking? You could have gotten hurt. And for what? Linda had clearly decided to fight back hard. All you did was get yourself into trouble. Are you proud of that? Actually, I should be asking you the same, Linda. Are you proud of yourself? I'm eager to hear what your parents will say about this. They don't need to know, Jim. It would only hurt them, and I know you wouldn't want that because you care about them too. She was partly right. I had started to see my in-laws as a second set of parents, and the idea of hurting them made me feel sick. But Linda had set events in motion, and soon her actions would not stay hidden. Besides, nothing has really changed. It's still just me, the same person as always, she said with a soft smile. Of course, she knew what I was thinking. There's nothing different. My feelings for you are just the same as they were yesterday. If that's true, then maybe we never had what I thought we did, I said, seeing her expression drop. Jim, honey, go upstairs and get ready. I put your things away. I took care of that before I came back. You know I would never please do it again. There was a seriousness in my tone that she had never heard before. She hurried upstairs without saying anything more. I thought I had enough time to calm my thoughts, but I was mistaken. I tried to gather myself while she took her time preparing, so we could talk about what to do next. I owed it to our kids. Eventually, she came back down in sweatpants, her hair pulled back, looking worried. Thanks for putting my things away, Jim. But where's the outfit I had on the bed at the hotel? I thought it would be best to get rid of it, just like you did with our time together. Jim, I bought that to share with you. I wanted to start making things right. I booked that hotel room for us, and we saw how well that turned out, didn't we? Her eyes dropped to the floor. I struggled to keep my cool. Was it what you expected? The question hung in the air. Finally, Linda looked at me, worry on her face. Jim, I know you have questions. I know we need to talk, and I'll tell you everything you want to know honestly. But are you sure you really want to know that? I want to be truthful, but I don't want to hurt you more. It's a bit late to be worried about that, isn't it? Linda flinched. I understand, but I'm scared that sharing what happened will hurt you more, and that could complicate things for us. Can't we focus on the future? One night shouldn't define everything. That's something you should have thought about earlier, I said, pointing to a little crystal vase that Linda adored, which always sat on our mantel. How many times would I have to throw that vase against the fireplace for it to break? Then what would it take for you to forgive me for breaking it? Even if there was a way to fix it, it would never be the same, right? Jim, I love that vase, but I can live without it. Our marriage is far more important than that vase. What we've built together over nearly 10 years is strong and beautiful. Our love is meant to face tough times and last forever. That I can't live without. I know you are hurting. I want to make it up to you, and I will no matter what. I believe you love me enough to move past this pain, and we'll be okay. Until last night, I thought you loved me enough not to betray my trust. I guess we were both wrong. Linda sank back into her chair. So, was the night and morning with him everything you hoped for? Mark is not a bad person. He's a kind man. I think you would like him if things were different. He doesn't respect boundaries. Any man who approaches a woman who is with someone else doesn't deserve admiration. Jim, Mark didn't take me from you. He couldn't. If he didn't take you away from me, where were you last night? Okay, he did spend the night with me, but I'm here with you now, and I want to stay with you for the rest of my life. Sure, you are here with me now, but what about him? Do you think he really cares? No, you are wrong. I'm here because I love you, because I'm your wife, and this is our home. Right. So if he had asked you to stay longer this afternoon, where would you be right now? Linda blushed. Okay, you're right about that. But Mark was kind and respectful while we were together, and I wish you wouldn't talk about him like that. Well, my feelings haven't mattered to you since he approached you last night, have they? So why should yours matter to me? I stood up, my words sharper than I intended. She flinched, surprised. I sat back down, trying to calm myself. All right, then. Let's try again. Was it everything you wanted? Everything and more. There was both sympathy and determination in her eyes as she looked at me. Well, I asked for that, didn't I? At least she seemed serious about being honest. I sighed, deciding to find out just how serious this was. How did it start? I asked. Linda paused, thinking carefully. I was shocked when Mark asked me to dance. I didn't try to get his attention. I thought he would ask someone else. When he asked me, I saw the envy in Dee's eyes, and I knew I might never have another chance to say I danced with Mark Lavaliere, so I took his hand. I was too nervous to say anything. I didn't even tell him my name until we were on the dance floor, and he asked. I thought I would dance a few times with him, and then come back to you, and you would understand. I enjoyed dancing with Mark. He is a really good dancer, as I'm sure you saw. He's thinking about teaching ballroom dancing when he's done with football. I think he'll be great at it. After the second fast dance, I thought we were finished. Just as I was about to thank him for the dance, the band started a slow song and he held me close. It sounds like something from a story, but at that moment I forgot about everything else. He didn't say a word, but I sensed he wanted something deeper than just a dance. I didn't really choose. It felt like I just understood it naturally. During the second slow dance, he asked if I was ready. I nodded. I couldn't find the words. There's a back door by the restrooms. Just say you have to go and I'll meet you there. I appreciated that he didn't walk over to our table directly. He then headed toward his table, leaving me with a mix of feelings. I did. Like a fool. I thought that after dancing with him, you'd want to be with me. It didn't occur to me that you were ready to leave. I keep telling you I wasn't leaving you. It was just like running errands. I knew I would come back when I finished, just like I always do. Really? So you think disappearing for a bit is the same as going to the store? Well, no, not exactly, but it still wasn't like I was really leaving you. That's hard to believe. She seemed surprised by my tone. I tried to keep calm. If I had interrupted you, would you have stayed with me? Linda looked at me. No. I guess I was expecting that answer, and I had to look away. I mean that little to you, then. No, Jim. Don't ever think that. You mean everything to me? Actions speak louder than words. Since he came over to you, your actions seem to show I mean nothing. I glanced at the clock. It's time to pick up the kids. I'll bring them home, help them settle in, and then I'll be out for the evening. I've had enough for now. Jim, I never wanted to hurt you. Please don't make things more complicated. Right. You've already done enough of that. Please, Jim, think of Emma and Tommy. What could this mean for them? I snapped at her. You mean like you were thinking of them before? No, you can't use them as an excuse. Linda looked shocked. While I'm away, I want you to write down what happened last night and this morning. I know it was important, but I need to understand your thoughts and feelings. I don't think I can be in the same room while you tell me. Right now I can hardly look at you, but I still need to know what happened. Maybe it won't be so difficult if I can read it instead. I'll do whatever you want, Jim, but how can I start to make it up to you if you're not here? I do have plans for us tonight, though. She smiled weakly at me. Not until you show me a clean bill of health from your doctor. Oh. Linda turned red. Must you put me on the spot like that, Jim? Mark is an athlete. I'm sure he's fine. Yeah, I'm sure he would have told you if you'd thought to ask. But you didn't, did you? I grabbed my coat and walked to the door. She confirmed that she allowed someone to be close to her without worrying about what she might catch or pass on to me. I love you, Jim. Right now, Linda, I don't understand what you mean by that. Emma and Tommy came running across Mrs. Porter's living room as soon as I stepped inside. I knelt down and picked up one of my kids in each arm while they yelled, "Daddy!" in my ears. Neither of them would let me put them down to walk to the car, so Mrs. Porter helped me grab a backpack for each of them and waved me out her door. They didn't stop talking for a second as I strapped them in, started the car, and drove home. You'd think they had been gone for a week with all the important things they needed to share. Of course, they had to argue over almost everything because there was no way their sibling could possibly be right. It was loud and chaotic, and I wouldn't have been able to say a word even if I tried. It was exactly what I needed. When we got home, they went through the same routine with Linda, which gave me time to unpack their bags and pack for my own overnight bag. They finally settled down, we had dinner, and read together like we always did. It was great family time, then it was off to bed. I kissed them as we tucked them in, and those kisses promised that no matter what happened between Linda and me, I would do right by my children, whatever it took. I've been thinking about what you asked me to do, Jim. Are you absolutely sure you want this in writing? Do you want to be able to look back years from now and feel hurt all over again? I never wanted any of this, but you did it anyway. It seems what I want doesn't mean anything to you anymore. I know I'm going to hate reading it, but I need to understand if I'm going to make the right choices moving forward. So no, I don't really want to read it, but I have to. Linda reached out to me, like she always did when I was upset. I took a step back from her. Her hand fell, and her expression changed. I guess I understand. It will be tough, but I'll do what you ask. I'll mark the parts that I think will be hardest so you can skip over them if you want. She was trying to help, just like she always did when I was feeling stressed. But it didn't work so well since she was the reason for the stress. I nodded and picked up my overnight bag. I'll see you tomorrow after dinner. I care about you, Jim. You know, I used to believe that. As I stepped outside, my phone rang. I didn't know the number but chose to answer anyway. Hello? Hi, is this Jim Lewis? I'm Janet Norton from the Sentinel. Do you have a few minutes to chat? Sure, Janet. You called at a good time. How can I help? Well, Jan Davis, who works our overnight desk, told me a strange story today and suggested I talk to you. I hear you had an interesting meeting with someone well-known in the city. Can you share what happened? For the next half hour, I told my story, answering her questions about how things were a day later. By now, I had told the story enough times that I could do it without the deep sadness that I felt at first. By the end of the call, Janet said she would write up the story for the next day's paper. She asked if she could call me if she had more questions. I told her I would help in any way I could and hoped her story would get published. I found a simple hotel about halfway between my home and office. After checking in and unpacking, I realized I was hungry, so I decided to stop by a local bar a few blocks away called The Willing Mind. It was made to look like a 19th century pub and had a cozy feel but was in a quiet part of town. I went there sometimes to relax. It was the perfect spot. I had a couple of beers over the next few hours and thought things through. At least that's what I told myself, but I can't remember any specific thoughts. I must have just sat there feeling the heaviness of my emotions until closing time. The future I wanted with the woman I cared about felt broken, or at least that's how it seemed. What did I want now? I needed to figure it out and make it happen because it was clear that my feelings didn't matter to Linda. The kids came first. That was evident. They deserved a stable home where they could grow and thrive. I would accept nothing less for myself or Linda. That was not up for discussion. What about Linda? She still thought that once I moved past my pain, we would go back to how we were before. That seemed unlikely. I knew I would heal with time, but that wouldn't fix the real issues. The memories of our struggles would stay, and despite her kind words, neither of us would be the same. Were Linda and I done then? I couldn't see any other way forward. What would that mean for Emma and Tommy? I felt uneasy at the thought of them having to move back and forth between us, spending weekends and holidays split between Linda and me. Kids often try to get one parent to side with them against the other, and this isn't good for them. If Linda and I split up, it would be too easy for them to play us against each other. Emma already had me wrapped around her finger, and I would be a complete softie by the time she was a teenager. Linda would be the same with Tommy. That playful look and cute smile could easily make his mother let her guard down. No, we needed to work together to raise them right. I just had to figure out how to make that happen. I was thankful I had the idea for Linda to write things down. This way, I could read through parts that confused me, and if I felt too upset, I could take a break and come back to it later. I noticed I didn't think clearly when I was angry or sad. I was surprised to realize that I was indeed grieving. Something very special was gone, the promise that I would always hold a special place in Linda's heart, the trust that I would be first in her life, and the belief that she would never intentionally hurt me. All of that felt lost forever. Did she miss what we had too? She seemed quick to move on. Did she have regrets now? As promised, I visited my house on Sunday evening and was welcomed by my kids' joyful voices. The thought of letting them down almost broke my heart. So when Linda greeted me with a smile and a warm hug, I welcomed it. Once the kids were asleep, Linda surprised me with her first question. Jim, where are we sleeping tonight? I really want us to connect, but I know we can't right now. I can sleep elsewhere, but I don't think the couch will be comfortable, and the air mattress still needs fixing after it leaked over the summer. I've booked a hotel near the office, and I'll be staying there while we sort things out between us. I know this will change some things for the kids, but I hope letting them stay in their home and sleep in their own beds will give them some stability. I get it, Linda said, her voice tinged with sadness. She sighed and pulled out a stack of handwritten notes from the coffee table drawer. I spent a lot of time working on this. I think one reason you left was to give me space to think without you here. I appreciate that. You know me well, even if you don't feel it right now. I tried to answer the questions I think you might have and the things that bother you. I know some of this will hurt to read, and I cried while writing it. This was tough. I could have softened the blow by not being completely honest, but you're right. We need to clear the air. I promise that every word I've written and everything I will say to you is the honest truth, no matter how it makes me look. I won't lie to you for any reason. Cautiously, almost shyly, she placed the papers in my hand. Good night, Jim. I appreciate you. She touched the top of my head softly before she left. I looked at the papers I held. I always liked Linda's handwriting. It was nice and clear without being too fancy. It showed who she was, just like the way she dressed and acted. She knew I liked it, which is why she chose to write it instead of typing. I took a deep breath and started to read. Dear Jim, yesterday afternoon when you left, you said you didn't understand what I meant when I said that I care about you. I was surprised. I didn't think you could think that, especially after everything we've been through together. I guess you believed that if I truly cared for you, I wouldn't have acted the way I did on Friday night. I would have thought the same thing. Just before Mark came over, if you had asked me if I could ever turn my back on you, I would have laughed and said it would never happen. But then it did. My feelings for you haven't changed. I promise they are the same. You've asked me to explain how that's possible, so I will try to be clear. First, please know that I didn't want to hurt or embarrass you, even though it happened. Some of what I write here might upset you, but you wanted honesty, and I will do my best to give it to you. I need you to understand what I felt when I was with Mark. I was very aware of how he acted the entire time. It made me feel small and exposed, even though he never pushed me. I felt overwhelmed, almost caught up in the situation. It was as if my own will was lost. I didn't choose to respond that way. It just happened. Did I enjoy that feeling at the time? Yes. How do I feel about it now? I'm worried that I could lose that much control in any situation. I have to face the fact that I did so without thinking about what it meant, especially with someone who I knew didn't care about me. I didn't try to take control back. I just went along with things as they came. Would it have felt the same with anyone else who was confident? I don't think so. You know, Paul is big and strong, and he can be assertive, but I never felt anything while dancing with him like I did with Mark. So I guess it must have just been Mark. When I signaled Dee to take me to the restroom, she already knew what it was about. She made a comment about him wanting the only pretty girl in the room who didn't pursue him. I think she might have been a little jealous. Then she told me how lucky I was and said she would make sure you didn't hear about it for long enough for me to get away. She wanted to remind you how much I cared for you and encouraged me to have a good time and share all the details later. I stepped out the door, and there was Mark with my coat. I wondered how he got it without the coat check ticket. I guess being a celebrity has its perks. When he helped me put it on and placed his hands on my shoulders, I felt just as overwhelmed as I had on the dance floor. He drove me to his house, took my coat, and hung it up. Then he played some soft music, and we danced for a while in his living room. I appreciated that he was being a true gentleman. We shared a nice moment as we moved together. After some time, Mark lifted me into his arms and carried me to his bedroom. He laid me down gently, and I felt a mix of emotions in that quiet moment. I'm not sure how long we were together. It felt like a long time, and sorry, Jim, but in that moment it was exactly what I wanted. Afterward, I quickly thought about texting you to let you know I was safe and that I loved you, but I was too tired to do it. In the middle of the night, I suddenly heard someone knocking on the door. I was half asleep when Mark got out of bed. I could hear talking downstairs, so I quickly put on the robe he had given me earlier and went to see you at the doorway. I was shocked. I didn't know you knew where I was, and I hoped that Mark would just send you home. But I got worried when he said I needed to talk to you. I didn't know what to say, so I told you to go home. That would give me a bit more time to think. I felt troubled as I turned back up the stairs, and Mark pulled me into his arms to comfort me until I calmed down. Then he walked me back up the stairs and we went to bed, with him holding me until I fell asleep. Just as I was drifting off, I suddenly woke up to the sound of an alarm and a car horn. Mark jumped out of bed, telling me to get up. Somehow he knew it was you, and he seemed upset. By the time I reached the front door, he was already moving across the lawn. I felt shocked. It felt like a nightmare, like I was watching everything in slow motion. I worried Mark would make things worse, or you would try to defend yourself. I dashed across the lawn, hoping to help. But before I could reach you, the police showed up out of nowhere. I was astonished at how quickly they arrived. All I could do was stand and watch as they separated you and Mark. I felt embarrassed explaining to the officer who you were and how I ended up at Mark's house. I felt judged, and it wasn't fair. Then they put you in handcuffs and took you away. I couldn't stop crying for the next 20 minutes in Mark's living room. How could something that started so beautifully turn out so badly? I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up in Mark's embrace. Even half asleep, I felt that same strong feeling I had at the club. When he woke up, we spent more time together, and then he made breakfast for me. It wasn't quite the same as when you make it, but I was too tired to mind. Afterward, we shared a quiet moment together. I was thankful for the chance to relax before he drove me home. Once I got into his car, I felt like I had choices again, as if he had given me freedom. I know it sounds silly, but that's how I felt. Maybe you were right. He had what he wanted, and perhaps he didn't need me anymore. I could feel that change coming. So, of course, I started thinking about you and how sad you must feel. I know tough times are ahead for us, but I refuse to believe our marriage is in danger. Our love is too strong. We are meant for each other. Mark drove into our driveway, thanked me for the time we had, and offered a friendly hug. He stayed in the driveway until I opened the front door, reminding me of how you used to do when we were dating. I think he treats all his dates kindly, but it was still a nice gesture. I smiled and waved goodbye, and he returned my smile, marking the end of that chapter. As I walked into our home, I felt eager to show you just how much I love you and want to spend my life with you. I feel the same way as I write this. I don't think Mark meant to upset you. It seemed like he thought he had a right to me, just as he might believe he has a right to any woman he wants. He picked me, and that was that. Not that he would have ignored my wishes. If I had said no, he probably would have moved on. He was sure I wouldn't say no to him, and he was right. You should know that Mark treated me kindly and respectfully while we were together. He was polite and gentlemanly. He treated me well, always holding doors for me. He even surprised me by remembering my name the next morning. I know it wasn't just about me. He likely treats all women this way. Still, I can't help but think well of him for it. This part will hurt, Jim. I'm crying as I write, thinking about how you will feel when you read this. Tears on the paper are such a cliché. I've borrowed a couple of your handkerchiefs from your drawer. They'll be ruined by the time I finish this. I'll buy you some new ones this week. I would never dream of writing or telling you this, except because you asked me to. Mark is attentive and experienced. He knows how to connect with someone in a way that feels really engaging. He understood what would make me happy better than I knew myself. He managed to be both gentle and confident, and even in those moments I felt a special connection. It was as if I was the instrument, and he was the musician. I've read and heard love described in terms of possession. I never really understood this before, but now I do. You treat me as your equal in everything. If we talk about belonging, we are connected. We are a team. From the moment Mark took me in his arms on the dance floor to when he drove me home, I could feel his attention. I gave him my full attention. I lost track of how many moments we shared. They all mixed together after a while. When he held me close, he captured my focus completely, leaving no space for anyone or anything else, even the most important parts of my life, you and our children. This is the hardest part to share. I'm very sad writing this, but you asked, so I have to be honest. I'm truly sorry, Jim, but this will be painful to hear. Mark is confident and experienced. Because of that, the connection felt stronger than I ever thought possible. It felt like a show, and I was simply part of it. You won't have that exact moment, and that's a blessing. But we have both learned so much from our time together. You want to grow because you love me, and that means more to me than anything else. That's the toughest thing to say. I hope it gets easier to talk about from here. Your second handkerchief is nearly soaked. Mark wanted to impress me, and he did, but it wasn't really about me as a person. I felt like just another person to him. He would likely act the same with anyone because of who he is, not because of who I am. For such a close moment, it felt surprisingly distant. There's one more thing you need to know. If Mark got down on his knees in front of me and asked me to leave you to marry him, I would say no. Even without Emma and Tommy, my answer would still be no. If both you and Mark asked me to marry you at the same time, I would choose you instantly. I wouldn't second-guess myself, and I would have no regrets. Mark is impressive, but you are truly special. He may be seen as a hero in the city, but you are my true hero. How can I call you my hero after saying I had stronger moments with Mark? We both know that there is more to a connection than just words. I doubt it was only a casual connection for Mark either. If it were, it wouldn't have felt as significant. But what we have together is far more important than anything I shared with Mark. If I had to choose between you and all the moments with Mark, I would be foolish to pick anything other than you. I do not have deep feelings for Mark. I respect him and enjoyed my time with him, but that's where it ends. It's over now, and I'm ready to focus on what really matters to me, going back to where my heart has always been for the last 10 years. Let me start at the beginning of this letter. How could I let this happen when I love you so much? Why didn't my love for you stop me? I don't fully understand, but here's what I think. When I got up to dance with Mark, I thought it would just be a few dances and some teasing from our friends. I didn't think much of it. He was someone everyone at our table wanted to dance with, and I felt flattered that he chose me. I didn't think anything was wrong with that at the time. Then the slow dances came. I think some men, like Mark, believe they can have any woman they want. There's a saying that power is seductive, and Mark was very confident in claiming his right to dance with me. I didn't question it. I thought, of course, and moved on, feeling flattered he wanted my attention. It wasn't that I stopped loving you or the kids. It feels more like I wasn't thinking at all. I was just reacting to him, like an instrument responds to music. I want to be clear, I do not love Mark. Not love. My heart is at home where it belongs, with you and our children, and it always will be. Jim, I know you're in a lot of pain right now, and it will take time to heal. Take all the time you need. Do whatever helps you. I ask for just two things. Please don't do anything to hurt the children, and don't seek comfort with someone else. I know it might sound unfair, but that would be hard for me. I want to support your healing process. I've arranged to have my blood drawn for tests tomorrow morning. Even the deepest wounds can heal with time, and I will be here for you for as long as you need, and beyond. I know you well, and I know you care about me. I see it in your eyes, even through the pain. I can feel your care as I write this, even though you're not here with me. I trust our future and our children's future to that care. I understand you're hurt that my feelings for you didn't stop me from sharing a dance with Mark, but now everything that was borrowed has been returned. Just like my feelings for you, they are unchanged and will belong to you always. With love, as always, Linda. I felt stunned and completely drained, both in my mind and body. Reading the letter took me on an emotional ride, and I knew I had endured enough for one day. I picked up the papers, turned off the lights, and quietly left the front door for my drive back to the hotel. I couldn't tell you what I did at work on Monday. Everyone seemed to go about their day as usual, but for me, it was anything but normal. I took my lunch late to meet with the divorce lawyer Derek had set up for me. At 1 o'clock, I found myself in a small, nice waiting room inside a tall office building downtown. At exactly 1, I was called into the office of Diane Hoffman, ESQ. Derek had texted me about the appointment, but I didn't know what to expect. All I knew was that she was careful about who she worked with. Diane stood up when I walked in. She was an older woman with a strong presence. It was odd that she kept saying, "If I decide to take your case," when I thought she was already going to represent me. "That is the most unbelievable story I have heard in my entire career," she said, shaking her head. "Are you sure you're not exaggerating a bit?" No, I replied. If anything, I might be downplaying it. Besides, I have a recording of everything that happened at Lavaliere's house on my phone. Diane looked at me in shock. You recorded it? Can you play it for me? I had listened to the recording a few times, so I guided her to the key parts. Before long, you could hear my conversation with Linda, followed by how I had disabled Lavaliere's car, and then his loud reaction when he came outside. As she listened, Diane's smile grew wider until, by the end, she was glowing. I need a copy of that recording, she said. The whole thing. Sure. Would you also like a copy of Linda's written confession? If Diane was surprised before, now she was totally amazed. You had her write it down? That is incredible. I handed her the pages, and she flipped through them, still shaking her head. This evidence is even better than what a private investigator would find. You have her explaining exactly what she did and how she felt throughout it all. So what do you want from this? I thought for a moment and said, I don't think what I really want is possible, so I'm left with tough choices. Ideally, I'd wish none of this ever happened. Since that can't be, I'd like something that would help me accept everything that's happened. But I doubt that's possible either. I still care for Linda despite what she's done, but she has hurt me deeply, maybe for good. I also worry about my kids and how all of this will affect them. Linda doesn't seem to believe she's done anything wrong, so I think the best thing to do is start the divorce process. At the same time, I'll try counseling to see if there's a way to fix my marriage. Jim, you've kept calm so far. You seem like a good person who cares about those around you. You're facing a really tough situation, especially coming from the one you cared for the most. Diane's expression became serious. When things like this happen, trust is often the first thing to break, and for good reason. Linda has already let you down, and you should expect that she might say anything to regain your trust. I can't tell you how many cases I've seen where, even after being caught, a partner still makes promises but doesn't follow through. To rebuild trust, you need something to compare Linda's words to. She said Mr. Lavaliere was hard to resist, but now she claims she will stay away from him. Maybe she will. But as Reagan used to say, trust but verify. I work with a skilled investigator. Here's his card. If you choose to use him, please tell him I sent you. He isn't cheap, but the cost matters. Hiring a team to follow your spouse can be very expensive and likely unnecessary. However, for about $3,000 or $4,000, you can capture most of her conversations, whether on the phone, in her car, or in person. What you hear can't be used in court, but if she's honest, that money can buy you a lot of trust. On the flip side, if she is doing something behind your back, you'll find out. It may sound harsh, but remember, forewarned is forearmed. That was a bit gloomy. Still, given her experience, I felt it was worth listening to her. Then Diane's serious look turned into a smile. I will start the paperwork so we can serve her soon. I'll also give you a brochure explaining what I need about your assets and child custody options. Go through the information and set up a meeting when you're ready. Jim, you have a case I'm excited to work on. Don't worry about the legal stuff. I'll take care of that. You just focus on your personal life. That's going to be enough to handle. 20 minutes later, I found myself in a simpler office across from a very ordinary man. Ron Jackson looked like many middle-aged men I had met, but at the same time, he didn't remind me of anyone specific. At around 5'7" and 190 pounds, he didn't stand out as particularly striking. On his left hand, he wore a wedding ring, and a family photo was framed on the shelf behind his desk. Even though he looked like an average guy, he showed great excitement as he talked about the electronic devices he had for sale. Skip the middleman and you save all your money, he joked. But really, the makers know I buy a lot from them, so they let me try out their cool gadgets, and I sell some to my clients. That afternoon, I spent almost $3,800 with Ron and got some very interesting tools. First, I signed up for an app that let me see every call and text the person made at any moment and saved them for later. Ron helped me download the app from the website and showed me how to do it on Linda's phone. On my phone, the app looked like a music note, pretending to be a music player. It would run on Linda's phone without anyone noticing. There was no visible app icon, so it would take an expert to know it was there. I also bought a phone tap that plugged directly into the home phone, along with 4 cameras hidden inside regular smoke detectors that used their existing power supply. These devices would upload their recordings straight to my laptop whenever it was connected to my home Wi-Fi. I just needed about 30 minutes in the house, while Linda was at work to set everything up, and once it was running, I could download hours of saved videos in less than 20 minutes from anywhere with Wi-Fi, even if I was not at home. I imagined that the CIA had better gear, but I felt relieved knowing I would not have any more surprises from Linda. By the time I wrapped things up with Ron, it was getting close to the end of the workday, and I didn't feel like going back to the office. I decided to go home a bit early since Linda wanted to talk about the letter, and I thought it was a good moment to address the situation. When I got home, Linda was starting dinner. I tried to keep things normal by sticking to my usual greeting, but avoided my typical gestures of affection. She seemed thoughtful, clearly worried about what our conversation would lead to. I decided to let her think for a bit, so I went into the family room to play with the kids, who were excited to see me at my usual time after work. Their happiness seemed to erase any worries about my absence in the morning. Once the kids were playing with their favorite toys, I noticed Linda's cell phone at the bottom of her purse, next to her coat on a chair in the living room. I felt relieved that she hadn't changed her password, which was based on our children's initials and birthdays. In less than 10 minutes, I opened the web browser, found the website for the surveillance app, downloaded it, connected her phone to mine, and cleared the browser history. During all of this, I worried someone might call and Linda would see me using her phone. Thankfully, that didn't happen. After the kids went to bed, Linda and I sat on the sofa, enjoying our usual glass of wine. "How was your day?" she asked. "Just a typical Monday," I replied, feeling tired. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. "Mine wasn't too bad, actually. It was nice to have something to focus on besides." She paused. "Yeah, I wish I could have done the same." I couldn't hide the edge in my voice. I noticed her pull back a little. "Dee called this afternoon," Linda said after a moment. "Really? What did she want?" "She's not as bad as you think, Jim. She asked about you first, even before asking about Mark. She said she's sorry you're going through so much, but she believes it will get better. In time, this will just be a small hurdle." That shows how much she understands. We sat in silence for a few moments. It felt like any other quiet evening at home, but I could sense a change. There was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. I think Linda sensed it too. "Do you have any questions, Jim? About what I wrote?" I shook my head, unsure of where to begin. There was something I hoped to find in there, but didn't. "What's that?" I could feel her nervousness. "Any sign that you understand what I have to work through if we stay together." I felt her shiver. "Do you want to talk about it tonight, or would you rather wait? It's important, but it doesn't have to be now. The sooner you share this, the sooner you can start healing. Let's do it tonight." I gathered my thoughts. Imagine we were out with friends. You walked away and spent all night with another guy. If that happened on our first date, would we have had a second one? But Jim, it was Mark. What difference does it make? You chose him over me. If that happened early on, that's your choice. You'd have a nice life, and I wouldn't want anything more to do with you, but I'd move on. After nearly 10 years of marriage, how can I get past that? Jim, I keep saying I didn't pick Mark over you. The truth is, I'll have to live with the idea that I'm your first choice only when he isn't around. Linda looked shocked. Jim, you have always been my first choice. You have been for more than 10 years. One night doesn't change that. One night did change things, or maybe it just showed how things really are. You chose him every time you could, from the moment he asked you to dance until he decided he was done. How can I make you understand that isn't true? You can't? Because it is true. Don't make excuses about not really deciding or that your choices were made for you. You signaled Dee to take you to the restroom. You asked her to cover for you. And when you walked out, you chose to go toward him instead of away. You made that choice. Linda was quiet for a moment. Maybe I just don't want it to be true, she said softly. I don't want to believe I'm the kind of person who would do that, even if my friends think it's okay. Dee told me this afternoon they do. But I promise you that's not how I feel inside. Remember just a week ago when we understood each other so well? What a mess. She shook her head sadly and continued, I know I've hurt you, and I can't take it back. But even the worst hurts can heal over time, right? This doesn't have to ruin our future, does it? You're right that this will hurt less as time passes, but don't you see it's about more than that? What you did that night changed our marriage forever. It showed me that things I thought I knew about you and our marriage were not what I believed. Basic things like you always being there for me, the promises we made to keep things private and trusting that you wouldn't be unkind to me. Since Friday night, everything feels different. None of it seems real now, and it may never be again. So what's left that I can rely on? She sighed but didn't answer. Jim, I haven't changed. I'm still the same person. I know ever since I came home Saturday, you've been looking for something different in me. You haven't found it, have you? And you won't, because it's not there. It's in how you see things. It was just a small moment in our lives together. We can't let this break us, Jim. Please tell me what's making this harder for you. It was my turn to think. You insist that you haven't changed. But if you're right, then I've been wrong about you for 10 years. Because I would have sworn you could never do what you did Friday night. If I was wrong about something so important, what else have I misunderstood? What, if anything, is left of what I thought I knew about you? You still haven't answered that. Linda kept trying to show that nothing had changed. I came home the next evening to the smell of a nice dinner and saw my beautiful wife wearing her blue dress with a shy smile. I couldn't help but think of her moment with someone else, and it was hard to look at her without feeling the weight of it all. Her smile faded a little, and I could see the worry in her eyes. I noticed Emma and Tommy behind Linda, helping to set the table and watching us. I closed my eyes and hugged Linda. I could feel her trying to hold back tears in front of the kids. I didn't mean I meant... Shh, I whispered. I understand what you're trying to say, but it's too soon for me. I'm not ready yet. I wondered if there would ever be a time when I would be ready. Should I change? She asked. No, the kids would notice something is off. Let me wash up and then we can eat. It smells amazing. I held her until she calmed down. Thank you, Jim. I love you. I got through that evening pretending everything was okay. I can't say I did a great job. Linda could sense my feelings. But the kids didn't notice anything unusual, and that was what mattered most. Once the kids were in bed, Linda began to share her feelings. I tried to comfort her gently. Linda, I understand. You wanted to show me how much you love me and that you haven't changed. The truth is, everything feels different right now. When I walked in, I felt like I saw part of what has been troubling me. I know that's not what you wanted. She began to cry again. But that's how it feels to me. She nodded, looking sad. What happens now, Jim? I honestly don't know, Linda. For tonight, I'm going back to my hotel. Okay, Jim. She took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. I know this is hard. I'm starting to realize how much I've hurt you. But I know the man I married. Tough times bring out the best in you. You may not see a way forward now, but I believe you will find a way for both of us. I love you and trust you completely. I sighed as I put on my coat. What if the man you married isn't here anymore? What if he's changed? Then I would feel lost too. But I don't believe that for a moment. Maybe we've changed, but deep down, I'm still me, and you're still my hero. She stood there in her beautiful blue dress, her blue eyes filled with determination. I gave her a small smile to honor her bravery and walked out. It felt unfair. She made a choice even if she didn't see it that way. She seemed to be having a good time while I struggled alone, and our friends acted like everything was fine. My life had turned chaotic, and I hadn't even done anything wrong. And now I was expected to find a way forward that works for both of us. I had told my friends that I saw no reason to stay married to Linda, and I still felt that way. I couldn't imagine being close to her again. Remembering our connection had become a painful reminder. Even seeing her around the house was hard. It was early in the day, and as I parked at my hotel, my cell phone started to ring. It was Derek. Hey, buddy, he said. You never told me you were talking to the press? Honestly, with all that had been happening lately, I hadn't thought to mention it to him. "How did you hear about that?" I asked. "It's all over the front page of the sports section in today's Sentinel. They're making Lavaliere and your wife look really bad. You should check it out before Linda finds it." So I turned around and drove to the nearest store to buy the paper. Sure enough, beside a picture of Lavaliere holding a trophy was a story I had shared with Janet Norton, but it had many more details about his endorsements, football career, and even the talks about his new contract. There were photos of his Corvette with a broken window, showing that the article aimed to highlight the most scandalous parts of my story, while suggesting it was just a rumor instead of a fact. For the next few hours, friends called to tell me about the article. Eventually, I decided to stop answering and let the calls go to voicemail. When I got back to my hotel room and checked the messages, I was surprised to find one from Doug Coffey, the host of the local sports talk radio show, Coffee in the Morning. "Jim," he said, "I saw the article in today's paper and wanted to see if you could call into our show tomorrow morning. We have our biggest audience between 7:30 and 8:30, so if you can call in and speak to our producer around 7 o'clock, we'll try to get you on air to share your side of the story." He gave me the producer's name and number. A little before 11 o'clock, I heard my phone make a new sound. I picked it up, entered my password, and saw a message that simply said, "Text." I tapped on it, and a messaging app opened. I recognized its importance right away. "Dear Linda, I was sorry not to see you at Morrison's last night. I hope you are doing okay. You are a wonderful person, and I remember our time together very fondly. I would love to meet again soon. I'll call you. With warm regards, Mark." I was shocked that Mark had texted my wife. This meant she had given him her number. What happened to saying, "It's over"? Why would she give her number to someone if she didn't expect him to reach out again? Like someone waiting for news, I kept expecting another message to show that Linda had replied. Thankfully, no message came. I browsed the internet for over an hour before I started to feel sleepy and finally decided to rest. Surprisingly, I fell asleep quickly. All the extra stress and activity seemed to tire me out more than usual. Then the dreams started. During the day, I could keep myself busy and push thoughts about Linda away. But at night, I was defenseless. I dreamed about the painful events at Morrison's. In my dreams, everyone there seemed to know what was happening and even supported it. It felt like a celebration, with everyone cheering for the couple. As my mind wandered, I pictured their time together, based on what Linda had written in her letter. I imagined how he had charmed her, and how she had reacted in ways she never had with me before. She said it was the best experience she had ever had. And that's what I saw that night and every night after. Sometimes I would wake up feeling upset, only to fall back asleep and go through the same nightmare again. Linda wasn't making things easier when I saw her. While she felt sorry for the hurt our marriage had suffered, it was clear that she didn't regret her earlier choices or think about how they affected us. How could I trust her? I thought our marriage was at its strongest that night at the club. We had just had a great week together, and were looking forward to a night we could celebrate for a long time. But Linda got caught up in the moment and didn't think about my feelings. She wouldn't even tell me what had happened, fearing it would ruin their time together. Even after everything, she closed the door on our love and life. These thoughts troubled me until I woke up on Tuesday morning. Before the sun rose, I was already awake, glad to be free from the worrying cycle my mind had been stuck in all night. Then I remembered that I had promised to call the radio station, so I got out of bed and began to get ready, thinking about how I would share my story. Like most mornings, I listened to Coffee in the Morning on my smartphone while I shaved and showered. The show focused on our team's performance in the game on Sunday, with callers sharing their thoughts on key players and plays that led to our disappointing loss. While Lavaliere's performance seemed lacking, the host was hesitant to dwell on it like he did with other strong players. At 7 o'clock, I called from my hotel room. A friendly receptionist answered with a warm greeting, put me on hold, and I listened to the show until the producer picked up. In a busy studio, Art guided me on how to share my story. He stressed the need to stick to the facts and not dwell on the feelings that had been troubling me. I was placed on hold again and listened as Dan Coffey prepared for my interview. He talked about Lavaliere's overall performance and pointed out important moments that helped the other team. I felt my nerves grow as I realized I was expected to explain why the team had lost. Just then, with a change in the line, Dan began speaking directly to me. "Now, Let's bring in someone who can help explain part of the reason the team did not perform well on Sunday. Here is Jim Lewis. Jim, you're not a sports expert, are you? No, I'm just a fan like everyone else. But you saw Mark Lavalier on Friday night, and you know what happened last weekend, correct? And that somehow made it into the pages of the Sentinel yesterday? Yes, Dan. You could say that Mark and I had a brief talk, and yes, that might have affected how he played on Sunday. With that, I shared a clear step-by-step account of what happened at Morrison's, leading up to my arrest. At first, Dan jumped in now and then to keep me on track, but by the end of 10 minutes, my story flowed out as if I had practiced it a lot. Without a comment, Dan added, "We have a lot of callers, so let's hear from them." What followed was a strong reaction that was unusual for a sports talk show. The first caller, clearly prepared for this, criticized Lavalier for letting personal matters affect his game. Although there were a few supporters of Lavalier who questioned my story, their voices were overwhelmed by the many upset callers. Dan kept me on the line for about 40 minutes, asking a few questions but mostly listening to the responses from the audience. As the segment wrapped up, he announced that while I was on air, the team's vice president of public affairs had called to say that he and Lavalier's agent wanted to join the show the next day to clear things up about my claims. Dan confirmed that they would have the 1-hour slot at 7 o'clock the following day and asked if I would be willing to call in afterward to share my thoughts. I could tell that Dan saw this as a win-win for him. If Lavalier's team managed to cast doubt on my story, it would help Dan's standing with them. If my David versus Goliath story won out, his listeners would love it. Either way, he would get 2 hours of good radio. I heard the sound that showed a change in our connection, and I was talking to Dan's producer again. Before, he had been professional, but now Art acted like we were close friends. He was both curious and kind. He was very surprised when I told him I had recorded our conversation. He asked if I could come to the studio to talk to Dan in person instead of calling the next day. "You know," he said, "it would really help if you could share that recording with us tonight. We want to see if we can use it when you're on air." I agreed and told him I would send it to Art's phone before noon. I had turned off my phone during the call and was glad I did. I was going up in the elevator when I remembered to turn the sound back up. As soon as I did, I noticed that Linda had sent me many texts and missed calls that morning. Until I put the app on her phone, I had no idea how much she used it. While I would text or call 2 or 3 times an hour, her phone was busy almost all the time. I couldn't understand how she got any work done. I knew reviewing all the messages would be a lot of work, and before I gave in to my curiosity, I needed to handle some important things first. I decided to wait until lunchtime when I could close my office door and focus on this for an hour. I had just returned to my office and sat down at my desk when I heard that familiar chirp again. The urge to check was strong, so I opened the message. I felt a strange sense of relief to see it was Mark texting again, instead of Linda replying to his late-night messages. "Hi, Linda, this is Mark. I'd really like to see you again. Is this a good number for me to call? Call me back so we can make plans. Hope to see you soon." Then, 20 minutes later, I heard another chirp. "Hi, Linda, it's Mark again. Sorry to message you twice, but I really want to see you. I think about our time together, and it felt special. I would love to do that again. Please call me." In just a moment, my heart was racing, and I was breathing hard, as if I had just run a race. Instead of feeling better, I now felt pressured, and my instincts started to kick in. Then, things got more complicated when my assistant Karen came to my door to tell me that my boss wanted to see me right away. Since I had spent so much time at the radio station, I was over an hour late. I worried about what this meeting could be about, so I peeked into his office, expecting to see his usual serious face. Instead, I found more of a smirk than a frown. "Come in, Jim. Have a seat." "I want to talk to you," I said as I took a seat. "I heard you on KS Sport while driving to work this morning. A lot of people seem to have listened to you. I just want to say how sorry I am for what happened. I wish you had told me what was happening when you first got into work on Monday." "Well, Paul," I started, "I think I was still in shock. Honestly, it was difficult to deal with having your wife be close to a famous person. I don't think I've fully gotten over it yet. I know you'll keep doing a great job for us. If you need some time off to handle anything, just let me know, and I can help with that." I was surprised he used a sports term. I didn't know my boss was such a fan. I thanked him and headed back to my office, noticing the looks I received from everyone around me. Throughout the rest of the day, the mood in the office seemed lighter. The women smiled at me more, and whenever I went to get coffee, use the copier, or even step away for a moment, one of the guys mentioned they had heard me on the radio and expressed their sympathy. I guess any kindness is appreciated. Before Friday, my life was pretty steady. There weren't many highs or lows. I never sought out excitement or trouble. Maybe that's why Linda felt she could act the way she did. She knew she could turn my world upside down and felt confident I would spend my energy trying to put things back to normal. But I now realized that my normal was not what I thought, and trying to reclaim it wasn't really what I wanted. When lunchtime came, I got ready to go through the new information with focus. I knew everyone would tackle it in their own way. I started with the messages and learned a lot about how women talk to each other. Most of the messages with her coworkers were just chatter. Who did what the night before? Who wore the same dress again? And so on. I figured I could mostly skip those or save them for later. The texts from friends were usually more engaging and often shared deeper feelings. But for real conversation, you need to talk in person, and that would provide the best understanding. So I began to listen to the phone calls. The first was a voicemail from our friend Jane, who had been there the night my life changed. Her message was short, just asking Linda to call her back, but it seemed like she had been more of a friend than I realized. Just as I was about to delete Jane's call, I heard another notification, and the phone screen jumped to the text messages. This time, it was Linda. She had just sent a text to Lavaliere. "Hi, Mark. Thanks for the text. I'm in a meeting with my boss, but I can call you in about 30 minutes. I'm glad you messaged me. I was worried you might ignore me. Sure, call back whenever you're free." "Great. Talk to you soon." I didn't realize I had been holding my breath while reading their messages. I hoped everything was okay. This wasn't a small issue, but it wasn't a huge deal either. But I might find out more in half an hour. Or maybe she was just going to tell him to leave her alone, as she hinted in her note. Either way, I planned to listen closely when that call came through. I wanted to be ready, so I decided to go to the restroom, then the copy machine, and finally the break room for some coffee. In total, that took less than 20 minutes. I returned to my desk and began clearing out calls Linda had received from vendors, co-workers, and salespeople. A few notifications popped up, but they were not important. Finally, one call caught my attention. "Hello? Mark, is that you?" "Yes, Linda. It's nice to hear from you. I miss you." "I miss you too, Mark. I can't stop thinking about you. But please be careful. Jim can't find out we're talking." "Don't worry. He's not looking for you. It's me he's upset with. He wasn't happy with things and even went to the newspaper and called into a radio show trying to make me look bad." "Jim would never do that. He had dinner with us last night. He would have told me if something was wrong." "Well, he did mention it, and he's not just bothering me. He's making others at the club uneasy. We're a team, and if one of us has a problem, it affects us all. You need to talk to him and ask him to back off before it gets worse." "I'll talk to him, Mark. He's stopping by again tonight. This isn't going as we talked about. I thought Jim would accept things. I thought he'd be upset for a while, and then we'd return to normal, like always. But this time feels different." "I wish you wouldn't make this so hard for yourself, Linda. We had something special. You said I made you feel understood in a new way. You couldn't picture life without me. You said that, remember?" "Yes, Mark. I feel that connection with you. But now I'm uncertain. Jim has been a good husband and a wonderful father. I feel safe with him. With you, it's exciting. But you said you've never committed to anyone before. How can I let Jim go if I'm not sure you'll be there for me? But don't you think it's worth the risk for something truly special?" "That's not an easy life, Mark, especially for my kids. They love their father, and I can't imagine being without them. I love you, but I can't spend my life with someone I can't trust to be loyal to me. Linda, don't think too much about it. I'm sure we'll find a solution. Can you give me some time to figure it out?" "Of course, Mark. I just can't lose Jim in this situation. And please, Linda, do what you need to do to handle him. I'm trying to work out my contract, and my agent says this is the last thing I need right now. I have a lot invested in this city, and I don't want to give it up because of an angry man like your husband." "I understand, Mark. I will try. Why don't you call me tomorrow at work and I will update you on what happens with Jim tonight? Sure. But remember, I care about you. I care about you too, she said softly. With those 2 words, I felt my hope for my marriage fade away. I pulled my earphones out and stared at the computer screen. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but it certainly wasn't this. Diane was right. Trust but verify. She didn't say what to do when your worst fears come true. After that, the chirp of my phone notifications, which had been new less than 24 hours before, became a constant reminder like the ringing phone at the front desk. My day turned into an emotional ride. I felt really good after almost every chat with my coworkers, but then the thought of Linda calling Jim would bring me down again. It happened often. I might have seemed distracted if anyone had looked closely. I spent the whole afternoon in an internal debate. When it was time for everyone to leave, Karen, my assistant, came in and took a seat with a concerned look. "Hey, boss, you seem a bit off today. Is there anything I can do to help?" A simple question with a complicated answer. Instead of opening up, I chose an easier path. "Thanks, but no. The best thing you can do is keep doing your amazing work. I will get through this." "I appreciate your concern. It's not just me, Jim. Others have noticed, and everyone feels the same." I thanked her and told her I appreciated her kindness more than she realized, but I suggested she should focus on her husband and teenage sons. She nodded and left the room, looking a bit reassured but still unsure. If my workday had been filled with care, it was the opposite when I stopped by home for dinner with Linda and the kids. I could sense something was wrong the moment I walked into the house. Emma and Tommy sat in the family room watching Frozen for what seemed like the millionth time. Linda was in the kitchen cooking dinner when I walked in from the garage. I smiled and said, "Something smells good." Without looking up, Linda replied, "Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes. She added, "The kids would love to spend some time with you." It was clear she was busy, so I decided to let it be for now. Dinner was a bit strange. Emma and Tommy both wanted my attention. Even though we didn't talk about our new living situation, they sensed something was different and were trying to adjust. Linda, however, was very quiet. She didn't join our conversation and avoided looking at me. Whenever I tried to engage her, she gave short replies, a nod, or a simple yes or no. It was clear that she was upset, but she didn't want to show her feelings in front of the kids. After dinner, I offered to help with the dishes, but instead, I was put in charge of getting the kids ready for bed. Once Tommy was tucked in and Emma was settled in her room with a book, Linda sat down at the kitchen table with her arms crossed, signaling me to join her for a serious talk. "I can't believe you did that," she started. "How could you do something without thinking about how it would affect me?" I guessed she had seen the newspaper article or heard the radio interview, but I wasn't certain of the details. I decided to let her explain. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I know you're still upset with me, but I can't believe you would say something so hurtful about Mark in public. You know that it impacts his career, right? And what about our friends? My parents? What do you think they'll think of me now?" Her voice got louder with every point she made. "First, if Mark cares about his career, he should have thought about the consequences of his actions. I gave you the choice to handle this privately, just between us, but you decided to stay with Mark. Our lives are shaped by our choices, and those choices come with consequences. Mark is very upset with you, Jim." Anger filled her voice. "You have no idea what he's capable of. He's wealthy and has a lot of influence in the community. He plans to stay here after he retires, and his charitable work connects him with many important people you don't even know." "When did you last talk to him, Linda?" I asked. Her expression changed quickly from anger to guilt and back to anger in no time. "He called me while I was at work." "How did he know where you worked?" I questioned. "He didn't. He called my cell phone." "And how did he get your cell phone number, Linda?" Her anger was fading as she thought about her answer. "I gave it to him." Her voice was much softer now. "And when did you give it to him?" She took a moment to answer. "When he brought me home on Saturday morning." Her words were quieter. I could tell she understood where this was going. "Why would you give him your number, Linda? Especially if you said you were never going to see him again." Linda hesitated, clearly thinking about her answer. I wasn't really thinking. He asked, and I just gave it to him. Next time he calls, let him know things will only get more complicated from here. I stood up from my chair. As for your other issues, we'll face them when they come up. I grabbed my jacket and put it on. I need to go home now. I have a lot to do tomorrow. But this is your home, Jim, Linda said slowly. I'm not sure about that, Linda. I guess we'll find out. I picked up the backpack I left by the couch and went out the door. My trip to Ron was looking smarter all the time. My laptop was in the backpack and had been downloading recordings while we talked. All I needed was a little time to set everything up and check what was there. But that would have to wait. It was past midnight when I reached my hotel room. A few hours of sleep, and I would get ready for the station. The dreams bothered me all night. I kept thinking about the night I felt ashamed. By Wednesday morning, I woke up at 4:30, staring at the ceiling. I could have gone back to sleep, but I didn't want to face the nightmares again. Eventually, I decided it was better to get up and shave and shower. By 5:30, I was dressed and called Art at K-Sport, getting to the studio an hour later. Art explained that he and Dan had arranged the morning plans. They decided to set up Lavaliere's agent and the public affairs representative in the main studio with Dan. During the interview, he wanted me to sit in a separate studio with a big glass window. I could see Dan, and he could see me. I could watch the whole interview without being noticed. I also noticed two young men in the control room at a console full of buttons and screens. As soon as I walked in, they displayed my audio file on a large screen and had me go through the recording, explaining what happened. They had already picked out many important parts and even highlighted the most significant clips. I had watched a lot of commercials and heard many on the radio, but I never realized how much work went into making them. Now, as I watched Art work with the team, it felt like how musicians put together a symphony. At about 10 minutes to 7 o'clock, I noticed two neatly dressed middle-aged men walking into the studio behind Dan, along with a few younger colleagues. My guess was right. The shorter man was Lavaliere's agent, and the taller man was the team's vice president of public affairs. They all sat around a desk facing big black microphones with pop filters. Both men looked friendly, honest, and sure of themselves. If trust was only about how people looked, I knew I had some serious problems. At 6:55, I got a text from Linda. It said, "Jim, I know where you are and what you're doing. Please don't do this. Think of me. Think of your family. Just let it go. Please." That hit me hard. I could guess who told her, and it definitely wasn't me. How did she find out so early in the morning? When could that call have happened? I shook my head in confusion. After reading the message, I turned off my phone so it wouldn't distract me. At 7 o'clock, the station aired 5 minutes of news, followed by 1 minute of commercials, 1 minute of weather, 30 seconds of traffic, and another minute of commercials. Finally, Dan's pre-recorded intro played, and he began his introduction. Everyone listening yesterday heard some remarkable radio, a sports show that mixes the drama of a soap opera, the tension of a daytime talk show, and a bit of real sports. Our guest, Jim Lewis, shared the story of a regular guy whose wife was taken away by a sports star, Mark Lavaliere. It's a sad story, but is it true? Our next guests say, no. They believe it's just the view of a frustrated fan going through a tough divorce. That's disappointing, I said aloud. These people were meant to support me, and this was their response? Had they set me up? I looked from my studio into the control room. Art was watching me with a slight smile, making the universal calm down gesture with his hand, as if he was bouncing a basketball. It was the expression on his face, more than the gesture, that relaxed me. I settled back and focused on the scene unfolding. The interview went smoothly, almost scripted, and included all the usual topics. Yes, Mark danced with my wife. No, he didn't know she was married. Yes, he left with her, but only to make sure she got home safely. Yes, he was at home when I showed up, but he was by himself. Out of anger, I reacted strongly. I damaged his car, breaking windows and making it difficult to use. They said that Mark wished I had understood the situation better and felt sorry when the police got involved. He offered to help me find the support I needed to get my life back on track. Most of their conversation lasted an hour, focusing on how sorry Mark felt about the confusion. They even took a few calls from listeners who seemed excited about Mark's comments. Throughout all of this, Art's face didn't change. He mostly stayed in the center of the control room, occasionally talking to one of the techs who were busy with their tasks. Their work seemed out of place with the quiet atmosphere around us. Finally, the hour ended. They reintroduced the segment for anyone tuning in late. Thanks were given, and Dan hinted at my upcoming segment by saying, "If you thought that was interesting, we have invited Jim Lewis to share his thoughts on our interview from this hour." As soon as Dan finished, everyone turned their attention to me, but their friendly expressions turned to annoyance. Just then, Art came into the studio, greeted everyone, and led them through the broadcast area and into the lobby. At that moment, one of the techs entered my studio and sat across from me. I noticed the other tech settle into position in Dan's main studio. Both began pointing at buttons on their consoles, and my tech introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Ray." While the interview was happening, my colleague Rick was pulling clips of what they said for the broadcast. I was also gathering clips from your recording and mixing them with ones I collected last night. The consoles in both studios are set up the same way, and we have loaded the same clips on both consoles. Dan will ask you what you thought of the interview you just listened to. Feel free to share your thoughts, but remember to avoid any words we can't use. Do you think you can do that? I nodded. Don't worry about the buttons. I'll handle them for you. They're marked so Dan can use them in any order if he wants. But he'll probably stick to our plan. We don't need to do much unless there's an issue with his console or he gets confused. Just focus on speaking clearly and sounding reasonable. Then Ray stopped and looked me in the eye. I stayed up all night gathering clips for you because I believe you faced an unfair situation. At some point in our lives, many people worry that something like this could happen to them. But this is real. I have my job, but I will make sure you're not treated unfairly again by a few people in fancy suits. Just then, Dan's introduction started, and we were on our way. I don't need to explain my hour on the show, but I can say that it went really well. Dan showed a video of some people saying that Lavalier didn't know Linda was married. I explained why that wasn't right, and then he played a clip of Lavalier talking about my wife, Linda. Next, Dan played a clip of those people saying that Linda wasn't at Lavalier's house when I got there. Again, I provided the facts about what really happened, followed by a clip of me talking to him and my conversation with my wife on his porch. Dan then played a clip where those people accused me of harming Lavalier's car. I explained what I actually did, which was followed by a clip of me explaining how I managed the situation without causing much trouble. Was it awkward? Yes. But it showed clearly that Lavalier and his team were not being truthful and couldn't be trusted. All of that took less than 30 minutes, so we had the rest of the hour to take calls from listeners. While many supported me, most were focused on the two people involved. Sports fans tend to be hopeful and often overlook mistakes if they believe someone is being honest and doing their best. But these fans do not like being misled, and they certainly felt that way. Dan took me all the way to 9 o'clock, and by the end of the program, I felt like I had worked a whole week in just a few hours. Dan was taking out his earpieces as Art waved me into the control room. For a moment, we were all quiet, and then Ray cheered, and everyone started clapping and congratulating me. I shook hands and thanked everyone. I had listened to this program every morning for at least 5 years and never knew how many dedicated people were making it work behind the scenes. Ray hugged me, and I felt that my story meant a lot to him. Dan asked if I would call in from time to time to keep everyone posted, and I agreed. As Art walked me to the lobby, he paused for a moment. "Jim, be careful," he said softly. "I'm not saying these people are dangerous, but big sports has powerful and wealthy people, and you have stirred things up for them. Stay cautious and avoid trouble, okay?" I smiled and replied, "Of course, Art. Thank you for everything." Then I walked out into the sunlight. Arriving at work felt strange after my first radio show. This time I felt like a victorious hero coming back home. It seemed like everyone in the company had heard my broadcast. From the receptionist to my boss, Paul, everyone was smiling, and they even applauded when I entered the break room for coffee. Then reality hit me. In my office, I saw 4 messages from the receptionist saying that Linda had called. I remembered that I had turned off my cell phone while I was at the station. When I turned it back on, I found 6 more voicemail messages from her. It was clear she had listened to the program, and all her messages were about the same thing. How could I do this to her and our kids? How could I treat Mark this way? I felt a twinge of guilt until I got to the last message. She was upset because I wasn't being kind to Mark? Really? As I listened to that last message, another call came in. It was Derek. "Jim, Jim, Jim!" he started, laughing. "I can't leave you alone for a minute, can I?" "I promise, Derek. This is the last time I'll do this for a while." "Well, it has to be, buddy. You have an arraignment next Monday at 9 o'clock in Judge Roberts' court. Remember, you've been accused of damaging Lavaliere's car, right?" "Of course, Derek. It's hard to forget a night in jail. So what happens at the hearing?" I asked. "Usually it's just about entering your plea and setting a trial date to get things moving. But in this case, I'm not sure. They seem to have a strong case since you admitted to the damage during your 911 call. The D.A. might see this as a chance to make a point because of your involvement with a celebrity." "Okay," I replied. "If time doesn't help us, what if I just plead guilty with an explanation and let the judge decide? The recording doesn't make me look good, so wouldn't that help my case?" "That sounds reasonable, Jim. Technically, the judge doesn't have to let you explain, but if it helps avoid a jury trial, they usually agree. I'll talk to the assistant DA and tell her we are ready for trial. Since state of mind will be important, I'll ask her to have the arresting officers available to support our side. I could make sure they come if needed, but if she agrees to bring them, it would look good for us. Let's meet at my office at 8 o'clock and we can walk to the courthouse together. And by the way," he added, "that recording was pretty clever. You really made an impression with it this morning. Next time, though, ask me before trying something like that." "So you can charge me for another consultation?" I joked. "No, so I can help keep you out of trouble. And send me a copy of that recording as soon as you can, along with anything else that I might not already have." "Sure thing, boss," I replied. "See you on Monday." I worked through lunch. Well, I didn't really work. I spent the time looking at the recordings from my house that had been saved the day before. I looked at the video first. I spent some time watching Linda get ready for work, but then I fast-forwarded to when Emma came home from school and Tommy came back from daycare. It reminded me how much I loved being with my kids. The audio software worked really well. Even though the tapes had a lot of empty space, the software skipped over that and played the good parts of the conversations. The house phone had the most calls. I heard Linda talking to a neighbor, another chat with her mother, and a conversation with Dee. They mostly talked about why I was staying in a motel and how I was still being hard to deal with. Dee mentioned that Linda was being too nice and not firm enough with me. She thought Linda should talk to me about the problems that could come if we didn't find a way to fix things. "Just tell him that if he doesn't change and you two get a divorce, he'll lose the house and half his things. He could hurt his relationship with the kids, too. He would have to pay you a lot for support while living in a smaller place. That would be hard for him, especially with young kids around. But I really don't want to put more pressure on Jim, D. I don't think that will help. He has been so quiet these last few days. I can't really tell what he's feeling. Mark said that Jim has been upset with him and needs me to help calm things down. I think it might be better to try to make peace so Jim won't feel like he needs to act out. Once things are better between us, I believe he will stop whatever he's doing. He's your husband, so you know him better than I do. It might help to be a little less understanding so he sees what he could lose. Right now, it feels like I'm the one missing out, Dee. Until things calm down, I can't tell if there's a chance for me and Mark, and I feel like I've lost Jim, too. Stay strong. You told me that you expected some reaction, and it's only been a few days. Emotions are still high, but Jim is still making time for his family. You just need to help him realize what is best for him." With that, they both said goodbye. Linda went to work, and Dee went on with her day. I was lost in my thoughts for the rest of the day. I did my work and talked to my team, but overall I was really distracted. I promised Linda that I would come over for dinner, and I wasn't sure how to talk to her without showing my true feelings. On the outside, everything felt different. The women in the office kept smiling at me, and the men gave me friendly pats on the back. This difference was confusing. I tried to stay focused at work, but I was good friends with Corey Williams from another sales team. So when Corey popped his head into my office at closing time and asked if I wanted to join him and some of the guys for drinks after work, I wasn't surprised. They invited me to these get-togethers regularly, but I usually declined, preferring to stay home with my family. Sorry, Corey, but I promised Linda I'd have dinner with my family tonight. I could see he was a bit let down. That's fine, Jim. I just thought you might want a break from everything. He had a point, but with everything that happened this week, I figured I would be the main topic of their talk whether I showed up or not. I started to pack up my office and decided to text Linda to let her know I was on my way. Her quick response surprised me. I don't think tonight is good. I heard about what you did to Mark and his friends this morning. Do you dislike me that much that you would hurt people you don't even know? I think we should wait a day or two. Let's talk tomorrow. From what I gathered from her call with Dee, I wondered if this was a part of some new plan, or if she was siding with Mark after my discussion about his actions. It felt a bit strange. That seemed to be it. Instead of feeling sorry, her text and the call with Lavaliere showed she still had strong feelings for Mark. I wasn't sure how he felt about her, but it seemed clear he wanted to keep things going with her, and I doubted Linda would easily say no. Just then, my phone beeped again with a text from Linda that said to Mark, 10 o'clock. I was still staring at my phone when Corey waved goodbye as he walked past my office. Hey, hold on, Corey, I called out. Is your invitation still open? Sure, he replied with a smile. All right, I'll join you, but it can't be at Morrison's, I said, and I saw his smile widen. No problem. We're heading to All-Star anyway, he said, mentioning a sports bar near the football stadium. We'll go straight there, so see you soon. All-Star was your typical sports bar. It had a big rectangular bar surrounded by high tables, low tables along the edges, and large booths against the walls. Dozens of flat-screen TVs were mounted on the walls around the restaurant, starting above the bar and spreading throughout the space. As soon as I walked in, I spotted Corey sitting at a tall table. When he noticed me, he waved his hand to get my attention. With him were 3 friends from work, Matthew and Sarah, who worked on Corey's sales team, and Jacob, who was in our contracting department. Among the 4 of them, Matthew and Corey were single. Jacob had just returned from his honeymoon, and Sarah was married with 2 young children, just like me. When I sat down, a strange quiet fell over the group, as if they were waiting for me to lead the conversation. I simply smiled, and Corey erupted in laughter, quickly pulling the rest of us into the joy. Jim, he chuckled. We haven't had this much fun at work in ages. Laughter spread around the table once more. The waitress took my drink order, and soon we started discussing my situation. All 4 of them had listened to me on the radio before, so they knew the basic details of my story. Trying to keep things light, I focused on the funny parts, including the line, "Sucks to be you," which got a good laugh. The bar was getting busier, and since it felt like a friendly gathering, I felt glad about coming here. I realized I had finished my beer faster than I thought, and was about to order another when I looked up and was surprised to see a smiling face. It wasn't our waitress after all, but a woman with the bluest eyes I had ever seen. Hi, I'm Ashley. Are you Jim Lewis? I hadn't met this kind woman before, so I was curious how she knew my name. Tall and with a bright appearance, Ashley seemed excited to talk. Yes, have we met? No, but you've made a big difference in my life. Her words caught my attention. Until 2 days ago, I was Mark Lavaliere's fiancé. My interest piqued at her revelation. Mark and I had been together for over a year. We even discussed marriage after he signed his new contract, and then everything changed, she said, sweeping her hand to indicate the busy environment around us. I could see the sadness hidden behind her smile. We had a brief talk, and I wanted to learn more, but it was hard to have a meaningful discussion with her standing beside our table. Then, with a bright idea, Ashley found a solution. Hey, I'm here with some friends at a big table by the window. She pointed toward the other side of the bar. Why don't you all come and join us? The expressions on Corey's and Matthew's faces said they would be ready to join a table of women if I agreed. It was clear everyone was waiting for my decision, so I spoke up. Sure, Ashley. That sounds like fun. I called our waitress over and asked to move our bill to the new area of the restaurant. You could easily see that the guys, even Jacob, were happy about the change. At the table were 3 very attractive young women. Ashley started introducing them. There was Jessica, who was black, Alexis, who was Hispanic, and Nicole, who was Asian. It felt like a little United Nations at one table. If you haven't guessed, we're all cheerleaders. That's how I met Mark, Ashley explained. We aren't allowed to hang out with players, but Mark and I kept our relationship private. The team wanted to avoid any problems with one of their star players. Her friends nodded in understanding. Then Corey took his turn, clearly enjoying his luck. One by one, he introduced our group, but before he could get to me, Ashley jumped in and said to her friends, "And this is Jim Lewis," pointing to me. To my surprise, all three women looked at me with recognition. It seemed my name had already come up in their discussion. The ladies shifted their seats to make room for us, with Ashley making sure to sit next to me. I noticed an empty seat to her left, and Alexis quickly waved Corey away when he tried to take it. Soon the conversation was lively. As often happens in larger groups, people changed places and topics frequently. But oddly enough, no one talked about the reason we had all come together, her ex-boyfriend's connection to my wife. Then all the girls turned toward the front door at the same time. I followed their gaze and saw a woman walk in. Even from a distance, I could tell that, unlike our new friends who were all quite tall, this woman was smaller, more like a gymnast. She looked a little older, perhaps in her early 30s, with Mediterranean features. Her hair was almost black and framed her face beautifully, and her dress both covered and showed off her figure. I stood up as she approached our table, and I was soon face to face with a stunning woman. I had never thought someone could be so beautiful. It wasn't just that she was pretty. She looked almost like a work of art, too vibrant and full of life to be stuck in a museum. Until that moment, I had thought Linda was always the most beautiful person in the room. Now she seemed less impressive in comparison. "Everyone, this is Ellen. She is the assistant coach for our team," Ashley announced. Then, pointing at me, she said, "And Ellen, this is Jim Lewis." Ellen looked surprised. I reached out my hand and looked into her lovely golden brown eyes. At first, she seemed excited like Ashley, but I also noticed a touch of sadness in her gaze. After a moment, she brightened up and smiled, hiding her feelings. "Wow, Jim Lewis. I'm so happy to finally meet you," she said, as if this moment meant a lot to her. We all sat down, and after Ellen ordered a drink, we started talking. "Okay," I said. "I can see why Ashley knows who I am, but I don't understand why everyone else does, too." Ellen replied, "Jim, you have no idea how much you've shaken things up in our program. This isn't just about Mark. It's affecting the whole team. Most professional athletes have been treated very well their whole lives. From a young age, they're often told they are special, and as they grow up, the rules for everyone else often don't apply to them. This can lead to a sense of entitlement, of feeling that as long as they perform well, they can do anything, even things that are clearly wrong. Look at Mark, for instance. Everyone knows that cheerleaders shouldn't hang out with players, let alone date them, but Mark is not just a star. He is the team's ambassador to the community. He wanted Ashley, and when the team found out about them, they chose to ignore it. Ashley fell hard for Mark. She was aware of his reputation before she joined our team, but she thought Mark was different, so when rumors started that he was acting up again, she chose to overlook them. "Jim, your wife wasn't the first woman Mark has chased. In fact, his way of showing he feels superior is by going after someone who is already with someone else. These situations usually last a few weeks until he feels he has taken everything he can. Sometimes the partner tries to ignore it, hoping it will just fade away. But often they are left heartbroken when he decides to move on. What you did was different. You faced Mark directly. Instead of letting him act without consequences, you turned his own arrogance against him. While it might not seem like it, Mark is nervous now. Management, especially the owner, now sees him as a risk, not an asset, someone they want to keep away from the spotlight. And it's not just Mark. The other players are worried too. For the first time, they see that their past actions could make them vulnerable. We're not supposed to share this, but this afternoon the general manager and coaching staff met with the entire team to discuss the bad press about Mark, and they mentioned you by name. Everyone was reminded that while they wear the uniform, they represent the team. The team is now putting in place a strict rule and upholding the values in the players' contracts. Mark attended the meeting, but it was clear he felt isolated. The management wanted to keep their distance from him, and his co-workers were careful about associating with him. Ellen's thoughts were eye-opening. I had been so wrapped up in my own problems that I didn't think about the bigger picture. It was clear why someone would seek help. Still, it was shocking to think that an event like this could lead to such big consequences. As the evening went on, I found out that Ashley had broken up with Mark after news of his connection with Linda came out. She had just returned from a cheer camp when Mark's actions became known. I wouldn't say Ashley was shallow, but it seemed she cared less about what Mark had done than about people knowing about it. Moreover, she didn't seem as upset over the breakup as I would have thought. Corey was clearly trying to step in to fill that space, and it felt like Ashley was going along with it. As the night wore on, the group slowly started to leave, and soon it was just Ashley, Corey, Ellen, and me. I had spent most of the evening talking to Ellen, who was eager to hear about me but held back when I tried to ask her questions. Not that she seemed to be hiding anything. Perhaps she just didn't want to share personal details while the younger girls were around. Noticing the late hour and that Ashley and Corey were in no rush to go, Ellen turned her face away from the others and softly said, "Jim, I don't want to impose on you during this tough time, but I haven't felt this at ease with anyone in years. I think there is more that we should talk about, and it seems like we won't have the chance to do that tonight. I was hoping we could meet again to finish our conversation." She looked at me with hope in her eyes. "I feel the same, Ellen. There is so much about all of this that I don't get, and we haven't talked much about you. So yes, I would love to see you again. The sooner, the better." I smiled back. "How about lunch tomorrow?" she asked. "That sounds great," I said. "Where would you like to go? Should I meet you there?" Ellen smiled and replied, "I think it's better if I meet you there. How about the Madison? It's quiet and I've heard the food is good. Does that work for you?" I had to hold back my surprise. The one thing that only the 5 couples who went out that night knew was that our evening began with dinner at the Madison. It wasn't a place I wanted to visit again soon, but I enjoyed seeing Ellen's excited face, so I agreed. "Then tomorrow at 12:30 at the Madison it is. I'll make the reservation," Ellen said, and wished me good night. I left the bar a little after 10 o'clock and started back to my hotel. Linda's text was unclear, and talking with Ellen had distracted me. But I kept thinking about Linda's message all night. When 10 o'clock passed without any more texts, I started to feel uneasy. I decided to take a longer way to the hotel that would go past my house just in case. As I drove slowly down my street, I glanced at my house. Everything looked normal. There were no strange cars in the driveway or parked out front. It seemed like the kids were asleep, with only the living room light on. This wasn't too unusual, but I knew Linda usually read or watched TV in bed at this time, so there should have been some light glowing from our bedroom. I didn't want to be nosy, but I felt curious, so I parked a few houses down and walked back toward my house. I went around to the back to look at the kitchen and family room, but they were both dark and empty. Our living room is at the front of the house, raised a bit above the sidewalk. Looking in the window would mean climbing a few steps, which could let anyone nearby see me. As I got closer to the porch, I spotted Linda sitting on the love seat with a glass of wine. She seemed to be having a serious but calm conversation with someone near the door, though I couldn't see who it was. My curiosity grew, but nothing seemed wrong, so I decided to step back to avoid being noticed. Just as I was leaving, I noticed a large shadow moving on the wall behind the couch. Quietly, I leaned closer to the window, and to my surprise, I saw it was Lavaliere in my living room. I felt frustrated and confused. I hadn't gotten any texts or calls, so it must have been that Linda spoke to him on her work phone. I didn't know what to do. If I walked in, it would show my worry. It was hard to pretend I didn't care in that situation. Then, I heard a gate open a few doors down, followed by a garbage can rolling across the driveway. I remembered that tomorrow was trash day, and a neighbor was just now putting out his cans. This caused a loud noise from dogs barking all around the neighborhood. This, along with my already uneasy feelings, made me feel even more exposed. I quickly left the steps, crossed the lawn, and walked down the sidewalk to my car. What was happening? I felt a bit better knowing I had everything recorded, but I would have to wait until the next day to download and look at the files. My meeting with Ron Jackson seemed to turn out better with each passing moment. That night, I had trouble sleeping. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop thinking about the recorded conversations between Linda and Lavaliere. My mind was also filled with confusing thoughts about Ellen and whatever she was thinking. On Thursday morning, I woke up early and listened to Coffee in the Morning while getting dressed. It sounded like our local football team was trying to improve its image, and a few reporters were talking with Dan about rumors of a potential trade that involved Lavaliere. My first thought was that it seemed like the team was trying to clear up some issues. The second thought was about what Linda would think of this news, especially after what I observed at her house the night before. I called my office and told the receptionist I had a legal matter to handle and asked her to let my boss, Paul, know I would be late. Paul had already given me the go-ahead to manage these things on my own, but I thought it was polite to give him a heads-up. Then, I called Diane Hoffman's office to confirm my 10 o'clock appointment and asked her secretary to let Diane know I would bring the financial documents she needed. Linda usually left for work a little before 8 o'clock, so I had about 2 hours to get into the house, download the recordings, gather the other documents for Diane, and still make it to my appointment on time. Just to be sure, I decided to text Linda before heading to her house to confirm she had already left. "Good morning, Linda," I texted. "I hope you slept well. I missed seeing you and the kids, and was hoping we could all have dinner together tomorrow night." I didn't include my usual affectionate words, knowing she would notice. Her reply was not very warm. "What's wrong? No news to share on the radio this morning?" "Nope," I replied. "Telling me safe today?" It was a bit childish, but I wanted to match her tone. Then I waited, and waited. Realizing she wasn't going to reply anytime soon, I put my phone in my pocket and went to the house. Pulling into my garage this early was a new experience for me. I saw that Linda's car was gone, and that no strange vehicles were in my spot. I parked my car, closed the garage door, grabbed my backpack with my laptop, and went inside to the kitchen. Everything looked the same as it did just a day and a half ago. The place was neat, with only a few breakfast dishes in the sink. I set up my laptop and started downloading the files that contained today's important new information. Next, I went into the den and got the latest financial records from the locked cabinet behind the desk. Once I had everything I needed, I decided to go upstairs and explore. First, I stopped in Tommy's bedroom. He had more toys than any kid I had ever seen, scattered about evenly on the floor and on his shelves. I sat on the bed and picked up his pillow, taking a deep breath to see if I could still catch a hint of his scent. I noticed a faint smell of his favorite shampoo, and even that made me smile. Then I went into Emma's room. Unlike Tommy's, Emma's room was perfectly clean. I pulled out her desk chair and sat down, looking first at the computer she used for her studies, and then around at the items on her shelves. Most were common little things, but on the lower right shelf, I noticed a picture that hadn't been there just a few days ago. It was a photo of the two of us at her school's Halloween party last year. The frame was a bright red heart shape. Suddenly, tears filled my eyes. I couldn't help it. Since they were born, I had not been away from my kids for 2 nights in a row, except for a few work trips and a couple of longer stays with Linda. I wiped my eyes and looked around the room. Seeing nothing new, I went down the hall to the master bedroom. At first, the bedroom looked unchanged, which I expected. But when I entered the bathroom, I was surprised to find that my things had been taken off the counter and put in a bag, stored away in a lower drawer. In their place, Linda had added her decorations and some of her cosmetics. I wondered what this might mean, as it did not seem like she was eagerly waiting for my return. A quick look in the closet showed that my suits and clothes had been pushed to the back, replaced by some new outfits of Linda's that I didn't recognize. Once again, I tried to make sense of this. By the time I returned to the kitchen, my files were all downloaded. I disconnected from the Wi-Fi, turned off the laptop, packed it along with the financial files into my backpack, and headed to my car. It only took a few minutes with Diane to see that she was handling everything well. She gave me a paper with a list of psychologists and marriage counselors that the court approved for our required sessions. She recommended that I review the list and choose my top 3, since courts usually require counseling when parents are going through a divorce, especially when kids are involved. I took the papers and went back to my office. Just a little while after I returned, The receptionist buzzed and said that someone named Dee Dee was on hold for me. I didn't remember a client or colleague by that name, but just in case it was someone important, I decided to answer the call. As soon as I said hello, I heard a very cheerful voice on the line. "Hi, Jim," she said. I recognized it right away. It was Dee, my friend. Before she could say anything more, I hung up. She was the last person I wanted to talk to. A few minutes later, Dave called to share his thoughts about the situation. "She helped my wife make some bad choices. I do not consider her a friend." "Jim, she's your friend and Linda's. She wants what we all want, for you to be happy and for you and Linda to be together. You can say that after your wives have gone through a similar situation. Is that what it will take? Seriously? Then call Dee and set up a meeting. Do it, Jim. We would all prefer that to you breaking up with Linda." "That's easy for you to say now, knowing that it won't happen. But since we're talking, there's something I need to tell you. Friday night, when Linda left the club with someone else, Dee told me something surprising. She said if that guy had chosen her instead of Linda, she might have made similar choices. I don't know if that changes how you see your marriage, but I think you should pay attention." Dave hesitated a little. He might not have liked it, but it seemed like he was starting to believe me. "Still," he continued, "Jim, can't you see? You and Linda are the best of us. People rely on you and look up to you. You're always the sober driver because we know you think ahead and do the right thing. If you two can't work things out, what hope do the rest of us have? Dave, I have to say, given what's happening, if Linda and I are the best of you, then your marriage might not have much hope." We exchanged a few more polite words and said goodbye. It seemed neither of us changed the other's mind, which was fine by me. He needed to live his life, just as I needed to live mine. As soon as I ended the call with Dave, I closed my office door and started reviewing the video recordings from my home the night before. With just a short break to reply to a message from Ellen about our lunch at 12:30, I found and started looking at the videos. The image on my screen seemed normal until Linda put the kids to bed and went into her bedroom. She took a shower and spent the next hour getting ready as if she were going out. This made me worried. A few minutes before 10 o'clock, Linda finished her makeup, slipped into her tight jeans, picked a nice blouse, and put on her favorite shoes before heading downstairs. A little while later, the house phone rang. When Linda answered, a man's voice simply said, "I'm 5 minutes away," and then hung up. Linda walked through the kitchen and into the garage, probably to open the garage door. After about 5 or 6 minutes, she came back to the kitchen, guiding a guest by the hand. It was clear they had planned this visit carefully to keep it secret and hide his car from our neighbors. I also noticed she had him park in my spot a telling detail, I thought. They paused for a moment in the kitchen while she poured them both a glass of wine. As they left, I switched to the video from the living room camera. I watched them enter and felt a bit relieved that they weren't being overly affectionate. I was also glad that Linda sat in the middle of the love seat, which kept her guest from getting too close. Instead, he took my usual chair, which faced hers near the front door. At first, the conversation was friendly, filled with compliments and how much they had missed each other. They spoke quietly, careful not to wake the children sleeping down the hall, which made it hard for me to hear some of their words. However, after a few minutes, the tone of the discussion changed. "I can't believe your husband, Linda. He's really trying to make things hard for me. Besides talking to the newspaper, he's been on the radio trying to ruin my reputation. When my agent and a representative from my team tried to help, he got in the way." "How could Jim even do that, Mark? He's just a sales manager. He doesn't know anyone important. I don't think he's even met the president of his own company. How could he get so much attention?" Now it was Mark's turn to act like a victim. "Linda, it's not just about him. It's about me. People think that because you're famous, everyone is on your side. But there are plenty of jealous people out there just waiting for a chance to bring you down. All they need is someone like your husband to give them something to use, and they'll turn against me fast." "But what about your friends? The business people, politicians, and charities you work with? Don't they stand by you?" she asked. "Yeah, sometimes they'll say something nice now and then. Most of the time, people only care about their own interests. They wait to see which way the public opinion shifts before taking action. But we need to change this, Linda. I received a call from my agent this afternoon. He mentioned that he had a meeting with the team's main office to discuss my new contract. Also, 3 companies I work with for endorsements reached out to my public relations team. They had to calm them down, as those companies were considering pulling out. I earn more from those deals than from my salary. Linda looked surprised. How can they do that, Mark? All those deals have terms that let them cancel if they think I've done something that hurts their reputation. Most endorsements have these terms, but they usually don't cause much trouble. My agent says we're fine for now, but I need to stay out of trouble and ensure your husband remains quiet. Before he finished, Lavaliere quickly turned his head toward the window, as if something outside caught his attention. It was unclear what he heard, maybe barking dogs or something else. He quietly got up from his chair and moved around for a better view. He looked back and forth several times, but nothing seemed to grab his focus. Linda stood up to ask if he wanted another drink. When he replied yes, she went to the kitchen to get it. Instead of returning to his chair, he chose the couch, leaving little space for my wife when she came back. Minutes later, I saw Linda walk into the room. She looked at Lavaliere on the couch, then at her own spot on the love seat and back at him. She handed him his drink, then sat down a little away from him. Just then, I was startled by a knocking at my office door. Gathering my thoughts, I shouted, "Come in!" The door opened and Karen rushed in, waving some papers. She said we had an issue with a big client we were working with. She turned and went to a table in the center of our cubicles, which we nicknamed the pig pen. All my earlier thoughts faded as we focused on solving the problem. Finally, just before noon, we made enough progress that I felt my team could handle the remaining issues on their own after lunch. Remembering my meeting with Ellen, I returned to my office to grab my coat and keys. As I walked by the pig pen on my way out, Karen hurried over with a worried look on her face. She said, "Sorry for interrupting like that, boss. You seemed a bit off. Is everything okay?" "Sure, Karen. You just caught me off guard. I have a lunch appointment in 20 minutes, and the place is also 20 minutes away. I might be a little late getting back, but I will check in with you when I do." With that, I left. The Madison was still fancy, but it felt more relaxed for business lunches to welcome the lunchtime crowd. A well-dressed group looked my way as I hurried past the hostess's stand and entered the dining room, not noticing a woman and her friends sitting in a booth near the entrance. I slowed to a leisurely walk as I moved between the tables, searching for Ellen's familiar face. Then I spotted her. I had been thinking about her since we parted the night before. She was lovely then, but the woman at a quiet table in the back was truly breathtaking. I wondered why she was waiting for me. As I got closer, she looked up, and a smile spread across her face, making me smile back. Ellen began to stand, but I gently placed my hand on her shoulder and said, "No, please." I leaned in and lightly touched my cheek to hers. It felt like no time had passed since we last saw each other, and we were right back where we left off. This time, Ellen's expression showed real happiness. When the waiter came to take our drink orders, we both quickly chose items from the menu, eager to enjoy our time together. Once the waiter left, we resumed our conversation from the night before, but I made sure to focus on Ellen. She talked about her childhood in a neighborhood for immigrants in Baltimore. Her father's parents were Greek and Italian, while her mother was the child of a Romani immigrant. This mix gave her a unique Mediterranean look. The Romani people often faced discrimination in Europe and were sadly targeted during dark times in history. Even after moving to the United States, they continued to face challenges, even from other immigrant groups. Ellen shared her parents' love story and the hurdles they encountered, including getting married young and managing their different backgrounds. She described them running away to Pennsylvania to begin a new life. Her father worked 2 jobs to support the family while attending college. Her mother took in laundry to stay home and care for Ellen. As she spoke, her eyes became watery when she recounted her father's accident. After a long day of work and school, he fell asleep while driving home from a late night of studying at the library. She talked about her father's family's rejection, her mother's deep sadness, and the difficult choices they faced afterward. Ellen looked down as she talked about the hard times she faced. She shared how her mother often seemed unaware of their struggles. She also recalled the moment when she stood up to her stepfather in public, which caused a big fight and ultimately led to her mother's marriage ending. By the time Ellen started elementary school, her mother began working outside their small apartment. She worked during the mornings and cooked at a nursing home in the afternoons and evenings. Ellen's mom tried hard to provide for her daughter while she was in high school. These tough experiences had a deep effect on Ellen. She often downplayed her looks, especially around boys. Though she was beautiful and athletic, earning a spot on the cheerleading team, she felt sensitive about her modest background. She made sure none of her friends ever saw where she lived except for one. During her last years of high school, Ellen went on a few dates, but she never saw any guy more than once until she met Brett. Everyone knew Brett. He was the star of the school basketball team. With good looks and standing 6'3", he made the All-State team as a junior and was part of the first-team All-State in their senior year. He was also very smart, receiving a scholarship as a National Honor Society finalist in his senior year. Halfway through junior year, Ellen noticed Brett started sitting near her in their classes, the lunchroom, and even a few times in the library. One morning, he nearly bumped into her in the stairwell. After getting himself together, he took that moment to ask her out. Surprised, she managed to say, yes. Their date was simple but wonderful. Brett came to pick Ellen up in his grandfather's old pickup truck and took her to a local park, where he had set a table with a nice tablecloth and pretty place settings. Even though the dinner was takeout from a nearby restaurant, Ellen was amazed that he went through all this trouble for her. They talked for hours, long after it got dark, until the last candle went out. After dinner, they cleaned up together, and their little touches sent butterflies through them both. He was so kind and genuine. This marked what Ellen saw as her first true love. Brett helped her come out of her shell, introducing her to new friends in his wider social group. Ellen did her best to support Brett in return. Whenever their schedules clashed, she usually went along with what he wanted. The only real challenge was their closeness. Ellen's past made it difficult for her to fully enjoy typical teenage experiences. As time went on, Ellen started to trust Brett and felt more comfortable when they were together. They continued to date more seriously throughout high school. When Brett got a full scholarship to a well-known university on the West Coast, Ellen was excited to follow him. She earned a partial scholarship and joined the freshman cheer team. However, Ellen's college experience took a difficult turn as she talked about her time there. She shared how Brett changed as his basketball career began to flourish. She remembered their wonderful first year, the tougher second year, and how everything fell apart in the third year. She described how he became more focused on himself. By the end of their junior year, Brett was different. He started to expect special treatment in his classes. He often complained about not having enough time to study, which led him to skip studying altogether. When his grades slipped instead of trying harder, he spoke to his coaches, and most of the time they changed his grades or found him help. Ellen described the parties with other athletes, often held off campus by former students. She talked about the drinks and how she felt pressured to join in, even though it made her uncomfortable. Eventually, feeling worn out as she spoke, she shared a major turning point. Just before finals, she found out she was going to have a baby. She felt ashamed and was uncertain if it was Brett's child. When she told him, he got upset. He wasn't ready for parenthood and vented his frustration towards her. He insisted she needed to deal with the problem. It seemed she had no choice, even though she didn't agree with it. But he said he would help. He promised to pay for it. Ellen talked about calling the local family planning center, setting up an appointment, and waiting 2 long weeks for the doctor to come. Her eyes filled with unshed tears as she recalled the day of the visit. Her voice quieted as she shared her discomfort afterward and the challenges that came with it. Then, shaking her head to regain her thoughts, she discussed the medical issues, including serious problems that arose during her recovery. She remembered how much she loved children. Since she was young, Ellen had dreamed of having a big, happy family, but that dream was now broken and had deeply affected her relationship with Brett. Ultimately, she realized she wanted to end things with him, acknowledging the unhealthy dynamic that had formed between them. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. I felt for Ellen. Now I understood the sadness in her eyes the first time we met. She empathized with me. She understood my struggles and carried the weight of her own experiences. When she looked my way, her sadness seemed to shift into hope. By sharing her story with someone who understood, she lightened her load. But then her expression changed to confusion and then surprise. I turned to see what caught her attention and saw Linda walking toward our table, her face tight with frustration. "What are you doing here? Who is she?" she demanded. I stood up, wanting to speak to her softly. "Please lower your voice, Linda." "Don't tell me what to do," she replied, raising her voice even more. "Is this an affair?" Seeing that a calm tone wouldn't work, I decided to speak firmly so nearby diners could hear. "This is not an affair, Linda. We are just having lunch. An affair means betrayal, and you should be familiar with that." Her face turned to shock as she glanced around, taking stock of the reactions around us. I had heard the phrase about taking the wind out of someone's sails, but had never seen it until then. It was impressive. "Ellen, could you give us a moment?" I asked kindly. Then, looking back at Linda, I said firmly, "We should step outside to avoid further embarrassment." I gently held Ellen's elbow as we walked away from the table toward the valet stand, wanting to find a private space to talk. As we passed the door, I noticed Dee trying to blend in with her friends, and it clicked for me how this had all happened. "I hope you're happy, Linda. Now everyone knows what's going on and probably thinks you're out of line. Just go back to your office or wherever you came from." Linda looked properly scolded, but still unhappy. "Who is she? How do you know her?" she pressed. "Her name is Ellen, and you introduced us," I replied. "That's not possible," she said. "I don't even know her." "So," I explained, "see, if you hadn't spent the weekend with someone else, Ellen wouldn't be having lunch with me today." "But Dee said she saw you holding her hand. What was that about?" Linda asked. "I was just comforting her. Ellen shared something very personal and painful with me. That's what kind people do," I explained. "And you had to do it behind my back," she shot back. "If it was so innocent, you should have invited me. You've said many times that married people shouldn't meet others without letting each other know." She had a point. I had mentioned that principle often, but I thought that since she was involved in her own affair, I could have a little freedom. "Yes, in a public restaurant, Linda. What did you expect would happen? Besides, it's not like you haven't done worse things recently. You keep bringing up my past. Can't you see that was different?" "I wasn't talking about last Friday," I said, noticing Linda's surprised expression. "What did you do last night, Linda?" "Nothing," she replied flatly. "Just spent time with the kids, as usual." "All evening, Linda?" I asked. She realized the connection. While I still didn't know all the details, I was certain she had crossed a line. "Of course," she said hesitantly. "I stopped by your house last night, Linda." Her expression changed to fear. "Why didn't you come in?" she asked. "Because you weren't alone, Linda." My frustration grew. "What did you see?" Her tone was now more timid. "Enough to know that what you told me isn't true." Her hand went to her mouth, reminding me of how she looked on the porch the other day. I realized I shouldn't share too much until I knew exactly what had happened. "We need to talk, Linda, but not here and not now. I'll come by after work to see the kids. We can talk after dinner," I said, making it clear there was no room for argument. She looked down but nodded. Without saying more, I left the area. As I entered the dining room, I stood in front of Dee's table, looking at her worried face. "You are a terrible person, Dee. I want you out of my life, completely. I don't want to see you or hear from you. If I do, I might have to take action you won't like. Do you understand?" Dee sat there, speechless. I continued, "I need you to nod your head, Dee. Do you get it?" She nodded. "Good." I turned and returned to my table. Ellen was sitting quietly, looking out the window when I took my seat. She turned to me, not angry or embarrassed, but with kindness. "That must have been difficult for you," she said, focusing on me. "But you handled it so well. How could a woman who had faced such a surprise still think of me first?" Empathy, I realized. That was it. The ability to understand others' feelings and to put yourself in someone else's place. That was exactly what Ellen had empathy and what Linda had seemed to lack throughout this whole situation. As I listened to Ellen steer our conversation back to our earlier topic, I tried to remember a time when Linda had shown that trait. Linda had many great qualities. She was kind, generous, loving, sweet, strong, and confident. But I couldn't remember a time when she had shown kindness during a hard situation. Linda's lack of understanding made it easy for her to leave me at Morrison's that night and to change her plans when I went to see her later. She didn't seem to care about my feelings, which made her think I would just accept the embarrassment she caused. Whether with me or with our children, having empathy was not something Linda did well. Ellen and I finished our lunch, but the mood had clearly changed and could not be fixed. We thanked each other for the nice meal and agreed to keep in touch, but we did not make any specific plans. We parted with a friendly wave. I thought to myself that a little time apart was what we needed, especially with everything happening around us. As soon as I got back from lunch, my team welcomed me back. They were excited about how well our solution had worked out. I was relieved, too, since if it had not worked, I would have had to deal with it all afternoon. Instead, I told Karen I needed some time alone. I went to my office, closed the door, and soon I was back to watching the recording from the night before. I lost track of time for the rest of the afternoon. I was physically there, but after watching the videos, I couldn't remember anything that happened. I vaguely remember Karen peeking in to say goodnight, but that was about it. It was after 6 o'clock, and only 1 or 2 people were left working. I had promised to go home and see the kids, but I found it hard to think about seeing, much less talking to, Linda. For now, though, keeping things normal was what mattered. When I arrived home, the house was quiet. Something was baking in the oven, and the table was set, so I didn't worry. As I looked closer, I saw an envelope placed on the plate in front of my chair. I picked it up and opened it to read a letter from Linda. "Dear Jim," she had written, "I know you've tried many times to explain to me why my night with Mark was such a problem for you, even making you think about divorce. Some of it made sense, like the things you thought you knew about me that turned out to be different that night. Still, I felt you were making it a bigger deal than necessary, and I admit I felt some resentment over it. Now I get it. I saw you with another woman and felt like I could never match her, just like you must have felt when I was with Mark. I watched you smile as you held her hand, and I could imagine how it felt when Dee told you I had left with him. I hope I never have to understand how I would feel if I knew you had shared a close bond with another woman. I already know enough. I am truly sorry for everything that happened with Mark. I regret dancing with him, leaving with him, and messing up our special night. I shared moments with him that I always wanted to be just ours. I couldn't say that before because I wasn't really sorry, as you may know. I felt bad for your pain but thought it was just one night, that you would get over it, and we would be okay. I didn't realize how deeply I had hurt you. It may sound silly, but it's true. Now I know, and I wish with all my heart I had been stronger and not let that happen. I know our old marriage is gone. Nothing can bring it back. What I want most is to start fresh with you, starting today. I choose you over everyone else, carefully and always, with every breath I take. I have learned that promises need care and attention, and sometimes effort to keep. There are no breaks from promises. I will keep you in my heart and mind every moment I am awake. Now, I carry the pain, both mine and yours, as a reminder of what can happen when I don't. I'm still just me. I can't compete with Ellen. Love always, with all my heart, soul, and mind, Linda. A week ago, I would have cherished the letter. Even just yesterday, I would have appreciated it, especially the self-awareness Linda was finally showing. But today was different. I had seen the recordings. I put the letter in my coat pocket, poured myself a drink, and waited in the living room for my wife and kids to come home. That evening with the kids was wonderful. It was hard not to be fully involved while playing with trucks, bears, and dolls. We enjoyed each other's company, and the laughter was a nice distraction. But soon, we were called for dinner. We all washed up and went to the kitchen as Linda set the food on the table, looking like a devoted homemaker. After dinner, I helped put the kids to bed and, as usual, helped them with their prayers. I even said a quiet one of my own, hoping for the wisdom to make the right choice, the choice that would bring us all peace. But peace didn't come. When I entered the living room, I noticed Linda had poured me a drink and was holding a glass of wine, signaling an important talk, but I just couldn't do it. I told her that, while I understood I had promised to talk, I was tired and needed to take a break for the night. "But what about my letter? Did you even read it?" she asked. "Of course I did, Linda, and I would love to discuss it with you." "Not tonight." With that, I put on my coat and walked to the door. "Don't I even get a goodbye?" she asked. I paused for a moment, thinking about my rule to keep things normal. I gave a quick wave and said I would be back tomorrow to chat. Back at the hotel, I had just started to change out of my work clothes when I heard the familiar alert from my phone. I picked it up and saw a text from Dee to Linda. "So, how did he react?" Dee asked. "I don't know," Linda replied. "He didn't stay long, so I didn't get to talk with him." "He's such a puzzle," Dee texted, seeming to ignore my earlier warning. "How can he not see how much you care and realize how lucky he is to have you?" "I'm not sure, Dee," Linda answered. "He seemed distant tonight, almost like he was in another world. I don't know what he's thinking or if he'll come back." "Well, don't stress about it. You have other options, right?" Dee replied mysteriously. "Has Mark said anything about the next time?" "No. I'm just taking it as it comes." After sharing some neighborhood news and saying goodbye, their text conversation ended. It was clear that Linda had told Dee about the visitor from last night and some moments they shared, but she was holding back the bigger details, even from her best friend. Feeling exhausted, I turned on the news while getting ready for bed. As I finally settled in, just as I was about to close my eyes, another notification came through. I thought about waiting until the morning, but my curiosity got the better of me. I rolled over and grabbed my phone. It was a recording of a call one that Linda had made to Lavaliere right after her chat with Dee. I pressed the play button and braced myself. "Hi, Mark. Sorry for calling so late, but I promised I would." They had talked again while Linda was at work. "No problem, babe. I'm just sitting here with a drink and going over the game plan for Sunday. You know, it's going to be fun watching you on TV, especially now that I know you better. Tell you what, Linda, I'll wear my football towel on the left side of my belt during the first half and on the right in the second. That way you'll know I'm thinking about you, even in an important game." He didn't mention that he had done the same for others over time to keep their interest. "I guess I better not tell Jim, in case he watches the game," Linda said with a laugh. "By the way, I'm sorry, but I didn't get to talk to him about stopping by. I know you said it was important, but it's almost like he's avoiding me." "Seems to run in the family, Linda. After our time together last night, I felt hopeful. But today, you didn't answer my calls, and I didn't hear from you until after your switchboard stopped working. I want to see as much of you as I can during the week since weekends are always so busy." "I'm not trying to avoid you, Mark. My life has just gotten very complicated lately," she said, frustration clear in her voice. "Linda, I know it's complicated. I think about you a lot. I remember our time together and feel there might be something special between us. I really want to get to know you better. You said our connection was important, and I can offer you support in ways that matter. You shared something special with me, and I believe you felt it too." Mark looked at Linda, speaking gently. "And you showed that again last night. So why are you pulling away now?" "Well," Linda hesitated, "it's nice when someone like you says kind things. You know the time we spent together was meaningful to me. But Jim is committed to me, and he is the father of our children. You know I can give you and the kids chances that he can't, right?" Mark said earnestly. "Linda, you owe it to yourself and your children to think about what we could have. I really feel like there might be something special between us. You may believe I say that to others, but I don't. I want to know the real you." Linda sighed, feeling torn. "I'm trying, Mark. But I want to do what's right for everyone, not just for us. We have our whole lives to think about." "Okay," Mark replied, sounding hesitant. "Just don't shut me out and don't take too long. I'm not used to waiting like this. You know I care about you." "And I care about you too, Mark," Linda said. With that, the conversation ended. That night, my dreams were unsettling. They started off simple, with Lavaliere sitting next to Linda and our friends at Morrison's. I was at the opposite end of the table, watching them from afar. Everyone seemed happy, making light jokes about how lucky I was. But as the dream moved on, the mood shifted, leaving me feeling out of place and distant. I woke up in a cold sweat, checking the clock. It was 4:30 early Friday morning, and no matter how hard I tried, sleep was out of reach. My mind kept replaying everything from the past week, searching for signs that this situation could even happen. Linda often mentioned that I was not the best partner, that our lives had been dull, and that my best traits were how well I took care of our family while neglecting my own needs. I felt quite lost and struggled to see how this story could ever have a happy ending except, perhaps, for Linda and her new partner. I decided I needed to change my approach. Since Linda had used my time away to focus on her new relationship, and I was missing my kids, I decided to move back into the house for now. I got up, got dressed, checked out of the hotel, and went to the nearest diner for breakfast. After I ate, I waited to be sure Linda was at work before I texted her to say I would be coming home that evening. She replied quickly with excitement. "That's wonderful news! I'm so happy and the kids will be thrilled. We need to talk to fix things, and I have so much to discuss with you," she wrote. When I arrived at the house, I set up my laptop to get the files from my security cameras and went upstairs to the bedrooms. After everything Linda had said and written, I knew I couldn't sleep in the same bed with her. I started in Tommy's room, organizing his favorite toys on the shelves and putting the rest in a large storage bag to store high up in the closet. I made some space by setting up an air mattress we had used on a camping trip and moved Tommy's sports car pillow and bedding to make it look nice. I repaired the mattress after our trip, and I thought sleeping on it would remind him of our camping adventure, which he loved. Next, I moved Emma's bedding to Tommy's bed and brought her dresser into the room. Although Emma was young, fitting her clothes into Tommy's closet was a bit tricky. Finally, I turned my attention to the master bedroom. It took almost 2 hours to move all of Linda's clothes and personal items into Emma's room and her cosmetics into the guest bathroom. Anything I couldn't fit into Emma's closet went into black garbage bags and were placed in the garage. Linda would not be happy with the new sleeping arrangements, but I believe she would understand this was a necessary, though temporary, change. Once I finished, I grabbed my laptop and headed to work, only a few hours late. Linda seemed to be in a good mood, texting me about looking forward to us returning to normal and asking if I wanted her to make anything special for dinner. My replies were a bit less enthusiastic than usual, but I didn't feel the need to say much more than necessary. I expected a text shortly after 5 o'clock when Linda got home with the kids, but I didn't get one. When I walked into the house an hour later, it felt a bit strange. The kids were sitting in front of the TV, dressed in their best clothes, watching their favorite show. Linda was in the kitchen, dressed up as if she was going out. She was finishing dinner and setting the table with our best dishes. Linda has always been direct, and she was clearly showing how important she thought this evening was. I decided to join her in this mood. I greeted her pleasantly when I walked in, but made sure to avoid any signs of affection. Linda didn't mention our new living situation, but when I went upstairs, I noticed she had changed some things. She had moved our wedding photo next to my side of the bed and placed another photo of herself from last year, facing me from the other side. Downstairs, dinner was nice but quiet. Tommy was excited about sharing a room, while Emma seemed a bit sad to leave her own space. When I told them that this arrangement might not be permanent, I noticed a smile on Linda's face before Emma fully understood. After dinner, Linda told me to relax while she did the dishes, which was unusual. Instead, I decided to play with the kids, help them wash up, read them each a story, and say their prayers before bedtime. When I went into the living room to get my briefcase and laptop, I found Linda sitting on the couch where our guest had been just 2 nights ago. On the coffee table in front of her was a glass of white wine and an open bottle of beer, showing she wanted to talk. I surprised her by saying I was tired and planned to go to bed. This clearly upset her, and trying to hide her disappointment, she said, "Jim, I know you're tired, but we have so much to discuss." "Is there anything that can't wait until tomorrow?" I asked. "Well, no," she admitted. "It's just that you've been busy this week, and I think we need to talk about what you've been doing with the newspaper and radio station." It was clear that she wanted to address these matters right away. This made me even more certain that our conversation could wait. "Sorry, Linda. I don't have anything planned for tonight, so I think it can wait until tomorrow. Good night." And I went upstairs. As I lay down to sleep, I heard a flurry of notifications on my phone. I didn't need to check them, but I knew it was likely Linda and someone else talking about me. I actually slept better knowing I had disrupted their plans. It seemed like sleeping in my own bed was just what I needed. I had the best sleep I'd had in a week and woke up at my usual time of 6 o'clock, which is normal for a workday but not for a Saturday. I decided to go against Linda's plans a little more by getting up, getting dressed, and heading out to catch up on chores I had been neglecting. At 8:30, Linda called me to breakfast, but since I was busy working in the backyard, I told her I would eat later. At 10 o'clock, I heard my phone beep, and soon after, Linda came into the yard asking if I could watch the kids while she went shopping. I agreed, and after she left, I checked my phone to see a message from someone else and then went inside to spend time with the kids. I thought this would be a good chance to bond with them, which I could use to excuse my extra work in the yard when Linda got back. Around 4 o'clock, Linda returned home with surprisingly few shopping bags. I had heard her pull up, so I was already back working outside, which left her a bit frustrated. By 5:30, I finished up and told her I was going to take a shower. Afterward, I lay down on the bed for a nap. I only woke up once when I heard Linda knock on the door to say dinner was ready, but when she opened the door a little, I pretended to be asleep. I heard Linda go into her new bedroom shortly after 10 o'clock, so I quietly went downstairs to the kitchen, made myself a sandwich, and went back upstairs to watch some TV before bed. My phone kept beeping, but I didn't feel like checking it, especially not right before sleep. That night, I slept even better. I guess making things difficult for a cheating spouse is a pretty good remedy for a hurting heart. Let's call it healing brew. I woke up early again on Sunday morning, and a fun idea popped into my head. I went into Emma and Tommy's room, quietly woke them up, and asked if they wanted to go to the zoo. They were thrilled. So without making any noise, we got dressed, went downstairs, left a note on the kitchen table, and headed to my favorite diner for breakfast. My note simply said, "I thought you might want some rest, so I decided to take the kids for the day. We're going to the zoo and won't be back until dinner time, so you'll have all day to run errands and relax. Enjoy your day." Wow, the zoo was quite a workout. I'm sure we saw every animal there and a few at least twice. I turned my phone off so we wouldn't be disturbed. I'll be honest. Part of that was to avoid calls from Linda, and part of it was to escape the constant beeping that had become too familiar. By the time we got home, I was really tired, but I managed to stay awake longer than both kids, who slept the whole ride home. I brought the kids into the house and found Linda sitting at the kitchen table. Even though it was time for dinner, it was clear nothing was being cooked, so I took the kids upstairs and helped them get into bed. They were still a bit sleepy, but waking up slowly. When I walked into the kitchen, Linda confronted me. "Where have you been? Why was your phone off? Why didn't you call me?" She asked her questions quickly. I thought the best way to calm things down was to answer simply, "We were at the zoo. I didn't want to be interrupted. I didn't want to interrupt you." I paused, hoping for no more questions, but all I got was a frown. Linda stood up, walked to the refrigerator, and sighed heavily. "The kids are asleep, but they might wake up in about half an hour. I gave them breakfast and a late lunch, but they will probably be hungry again, so you should think about what to feed them. I'm having dinner with Derek, so I won't see you until later." "We were supposed to talk tonight," she said. "But now you'll be with your friend. What about me? What about our family?" "Linda, I spent all day with my family and they seemed happy. You're the one who wanted to talk. I don't think I'm ready to do that." Besides, I could guess what she wanted to talk about, and I was not keen on discussing it. I placed our copy of the Sunday Sentinel on the counter. On the front page was an article by Janet Norton and the senior sports writer titled, "Lavaliere is History. Local star traded to Salt Lake City." The article talked about the events from the past week after our night out, the media attention, the fans' reactions, and how Lavaliere lost 2 major endorsement deals. I was surprised that the team, which had sent people to a radio studio earlier in the week, was now saying that Lavaliere's values no longer reflect those of our team or the community. It was shocking how quickly things changed. Linda glanced at the newspaper and then turned away without saying anything. It was clear she already knew about it. I had picked up the paper on my way out with the kids, and I wondered how she found out I had a pretty good idea. That was so unfair, Jim. Mark is a good man. He was part of the community. You didn't have to do that to him. I could feel myself getting upset. I'm sorry, Linda, but many others share the blame for what happened to him, and one of them is in this kitchen. I replied firmly, and I am not seeing Derek socially. It might not seem as important to you as what happened to your friend, but as I told you on Tuesday, I have a hearing tomorrow morning, and I want to be ready. Linda stayed quiet and started taking things out of the refrigerator. I might be a little late, I said as I opened the door to leave. I wasn't actually meeting with Derek, even though he did ask me to call about our schedule for the next morning. I just wanted to avoid talking to Linda and accidentally sharing what I had seen when I finally checked the security video from Wednesday night. I did grab dinner while talking to Derek. I happened to be sitting alone at a table outside Taco Bell. We went over the plans for the next day, and Derek mentioned that since this would probably be the first and last time the issue came before him, we would likely be at the end of the schedule. This way, the judge could take care of the simpler cases before addressing the more serious ones. I told him that while Linda knew about the hearing, I wasn't sure if she would attend and why. I also mentioned that my divorce lawyer, Diane Hoffman, was informed about the hearing and planned to send someone from her office, too. Derek thought that was a good idea. Our chat lasted less than 30 minutes, but by the end, I felt like I had been on the witness stand for an hour. After saying goodbye, I decided to take a walk in the city's new business park. Walking among the tall buildings at night felt almost like hiking a mountain trail. I looked through Linda's text messages and saw Lavalier expressing his annoyance about the trade. It made me smile a bit, imagining him trying to win over married women, knowing their protective husbands would likely not ignore his actions. When I got back home, the house was dark except for a light in Linda's room. I quietly went upstairs and entered the master bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. As I took off my jacket, I heard a light knock on the door. Though I didn't really want to talk to Linda, I felt it would be rude to not at least listen to her. I opened the door and signaled for her to come in. Linda looked tired, her makeup still on, wearing a robe that showed her sadness. She sat on the bed, clearly affected by the day, and I felt I should not add to her troubles. "Is there any chance for us, Jim?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "I don't know, Linda," I answered honestly. "If you had come home with me instead of staying with Lavalier, things might have been different. It would have taken a lot of talking and healing, but I could see us trying. Now I'm just not sure." Suddenly she stood up and turned to me, tears in her eyes. I had never seen her so open before. I held her close as she shared her feelings with great emotion. "I never wanted things to turn out this way. I didn't ask for this, not him or anyone. You know I would never betray you. I love you so much, Jim. Please believe me. I can't stand the thought of having messed everything up. You're the strong one. Please tell me we can fix this. Give me some hope." I let out a sigh, not able to see her clearly but feeling her sadness. My heart hurt for what we had gone through together. Even with all the confusion, I knew I couldn't hide my true feelings. "I love you, Linda," I said softly, tears streaming down my face and mixing with hers. But I understood that even love couldn't heal some wounds quickly. It would always be a part of us. What did that mean for us and for Emma and Tommy? Only time would tell. And for now, it wasn't clear. We'll have to see how things unfold, but I believe that even in the darkest times, there is always a bit of hope, a little chance for something good. I sighed. But I need to get up early tomorrow to meet with Derek before we head to the courthouse, so I should go to bed. Have you thought about attending the hearing? "Of course." Her answer was quick and certain. "Wherever you are is where I want to be, unless you say otherwise. Right now, all I want is to do what it takes to help us move forward together. You're stuck with me." She smiled, and while her lips showed hope, her eyes reflected determination. I nodded. "Good night, Linda," I said as I gave her a brief hug. Then I opened the door for her. Linda stepped out, carrying a heavy burden. I felt no longer angry with her. Even my pain felt less sharp. But in its place was a chilly emptiness. As I told her, I had no idea how everything would turn out. I just wished for the best, especially for Emma and Tommy. Almost as soon as my head hit the pillow, my alarm rang. I had set it for 5 o'clock, hoping to start my day early. It was Monday morning, and I had things to do. I went into the bathroom to get ready, and by 6 o'clock I was leaving the house, letting everyone else sleep. I felt nervous as I drove to Derek's office, just a few blocks from the courthouse. I passed my favorite diner, but realized I wasn't hungry at all. To buy some time, I stopped at a convenience store, filled my car with gas, and grabbed a Diet Coke. I noticed the rack of newspapers and smiled when I saw Lavaliere's picture next to a big article on the front page of the Sentinel. It looked like Janet Norton's story was becoming one of the biggest in the city this year. Of course, I bought the newspaper, even though I already had one at home. I drove to Derek's office, and after sending a text that I was in his parking garage, I waited with my drink and an article until he arrived. Around 7:30, Derek texted that he was coming down the elevator. Just a few minutes later, he showed up at the glass doors of his building, pulling a large suitcase on wheels, looking like a busy traveler. As we walked, we talked, and it was clear that Derek wanted to reassure me. He repeated how the proceedings would go. I let him speak, hoping that his calm words would help him feel better too. In the lobby, there were only a few other people, along with some officers checking everyone as we entered. If you think the people at the airport are strict, these officers were even tougher. Since the courtroom dealt with both criminal and civil cases, I figured they probably had to be extra cautious about who came through those doors. It seemed better for them to handle any trouble here at the entrance than in a quiet courtroom. From the lobby, we took the elevator up to the 3rd floor. When we stepped off, we found ourselves in a long hallway lined with big windows on one side and dark wooden walls on the other. There were double doors every few feet. A few people were chatting near a couple of those doors. As we reached the second-to-last door down the hall, Derek greeted a middle-aged woman in a dark suit. "Bobby, I see you got here before me today," he said, not introducing me. "I had planned for a quiet day until you changed that," she replied. Derek turned to me, excused himself, and walked away with the woman, speaking softly. I took out my phone and texted Linda. "Just got to the courthouse." A little later, I got her reply. "I'm at the office. Let me know when your hearing starts, and I'll come over." I responded with a thumbs-up emoji. I then pulled out the citation I had been given and looked up the law I had broken. It said, Vehicle Code 30661. No person shall with intent to cause any mischief, harm, or other crime climb into or on a vehicle whether it is moving or stopped, nor shall anyone try to use any controls or mechanisms of a vehicle while it is stopped and unattended. It sounded like what I had done, so I checked what was needed to be found guilty. It read, "The state must show that the accused was properly arrested, show the intent to cause any harm, and acted without the vehicle owner's permission." It was clear why Derek believed the prosecutor had a strong case against me. So, what about the consequences? A violation of this section is charged as a misdemeanor, not as a felony or an infraction. As a misdemeanor, the crime of causing harm to a vehicle can lead to up to 6 months in county jail and/or a fine of up to $1,000. Now I felt nervous. It seemed pretty straightforward. I wasn't overly concerned about the $1,000 fine, but I was worried about pleading guilty to something that could cause serious trouble. Just as my anxiety grew, Derek came back, but Roberta Malenkov, the assistant district attorney, was not with him. "Good talk," he said briefly. I shared what I had learned during my quick research, and he looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "Jim, I'm your lawyer. You're smart, but you're not a lawyer. Let me take care of this, and you focus on not making things worse, okay?" I nodded. Derek then took me into the empty courtroom. I was surprised to see it looked just like the ones on TV and in movies. The judge sat behind a large desk up on a platform, with some equipment and file cabinets close by. Next to the judge was a small witness box, and beyond that was a raised area with 12 black leather chairs. Derek pointed to a seat in the first row directly behind the defendant's table, spreading our materials out to hold our spots. Over the next 45 minutes, more people started filling the room. Just before 9 o'clock, an older woman and a young deputy came into the courtroom. "Have all the attorneys signed in?" the deputy called out. Several attorneys went up to the clerk's box and wrote down their names next to their case numbers. At exactly 9 o'clock, the bailiff announced, "Please silence your cell phones. If your phone rings while court is in session, you will be asked to leave." Immediately, several hands, including mine, reached for our phones. It was reassuring to see that Derek was not among them, having quietly taken care of it earlier. The bailiff called out again, "All rise." Everyone in the courtroom stood together as a tall man in a black robe came in and took his seat. Hear ye, hear ye. This Superior Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marvin P. Roberts presiding. As the judge settled in, the bailiff commanded, "Be seated," and once more everyone sat down together. Derek leaned over and whispered that there were 12 cases set for that morning, and as expected, mine was last. Roberta had gone back to her office in another part of the courthouse, but had asked the clerk to inform her when it was time for my case. A very young-looking woman, fresh from law school, took the empty seat. She was surrounded by a tall stack of legal folders. For the next 2 hours, we waited. It felt like each case was getting more serious. Each defendant seemed more tough than the last, and the judge appeared more impatient with each one. I worried that by the time it was my turn, he would be completely fed up. By 11:20, all other cases were done, and most people had left the room. Bobby, or Miss Malenkoff, arrived with an assistant and started organizing papers at the prosecutor's desk. Derek moved up to sit behind the table labeled Defendant. I looked around and saw that Janet Norton had quietly entered and taken a seat in the back near the door. I also noticed that Linda was still not here, even though I had texted her almost an hour ago. "Bailiff, please call the next case," the judge said in a commanding voice. "Case M-92,014. The State versus James Thomas Lewis is now before this Superior Court." Without being asked, the clerk added, "Mr. Lewis is charged with Vehicle Code 10853 VC malicious mischief to a vehicle. This occurred at around 3:10 in the morning on March 1st of this year when he entered the property of Marcus Allen Lavaliere and caused minor damage to Mr. Lavaliere's vehicle." The judge then turned to the prosecutor. "I understand that you and Mr. Miller have discussed this case and believe it can be settled today. Is that right?" Both lawyers nodded and said, "Yes, Your Honor." "Since it looks like we might avoid a costly trial, I would like to see both lawyers in my chambers," the judge said. He then stood and walked through the door at the back of the courtroom. Derek and Miss Malenkoff both gathered their files, with Derek also taking a small recorder before following the judge. A few minutes later, 2 uniformed city police officers came in. I recognized them as the officers who had arrested me a week before. They did not look my way and sat in the empty row behind the prosecutor's table. One at a time, 2 young men and an older man entered the courtroom and took seats in the back, all near the door. Just when I thought Linda wouldn't show up, the double doors opened, and in walked Lavaliere, followed closely by my wife. She tried to keep distance to make it seem like their entrance was just a coincidence, but the look on her face showed they had talked before. Linda came over and took the seat next to me. Lavaliere stood behind the 2 officers. A few minutes later, his agent came in and sat down near the wall, leaving a space between them. I glanced past Linda to see Lavaliere, who looked angry and was staring at me. He was a big man, but it was clear he felt uncomfortable in this place. "Has it started yet?" Linda asked, wanting to talk. "Yes," I whispered. "About 20 minutes ago. The judge is meeting with Derek and the prosecutor in his office." I put a finger to my lips to signal silence. We waited quietly for another 15 minutes. Then the door opened, and Derek with the prosecutor walked to their tables and stood ready. Derek signaled for me to come over, showing me where to stand next to him. Almost at the same moment, the bailiff announced, "All rise." The judge came into the room and took his seat. "Mr. Miller," the judge called, "do you need time to talk with your client?" "No, Your Honor." "Is your client ready to enter a plea to the charges against him?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Lewis, your lawyer has represented you well. I have one question about the payments that need to be made before I give my decision. Mr. Miller, do you have the repair estimates that you shared earlier? Please give them to the bailiff." Derek handed a small folder to the bailiff, who then passed it to the judge. "As I see it," the judge began, "Mr. Lewis caused damage to 4 rubber parts, for which you have 3 estimates ranging from $88, $78 to $112, 14. He also broke the driver's side window, and you have 3 repair estimates from $242, $99 to $348, 59. The least amount I could ask for is $331, 77, and the most would be $460, 73. However, your lawyer says you offered Mr. Lavaliere $500, which he refused. Is that correct, Mr. Lewis? He asked. Yes, Your Honor, I answered. At that moment, Lavaliere stood up. That's not true. He never offered me anything. Is that right, Mrs. Lewis? Did your husband offer Mr. Lavaliere $500? The judge asked Linda. Linda looked surprised and seemed unsure about how to respond. She glanced at Lavaliere, who gave her a look that seemed to prompt her. She then looked at me, but I did not show any emotion. Finally, she turned to the judge. In a clear voice, she said, No, Your Honor. Jim didn't offer anything to Mark. The judge asked again, Are you certain, Miss Lewis? If your husband lied, he could face a harsher sentence and be found in contempt of court. I'm sure, Your Honor. I was there the whole time. If anything like that had happened, I would have seen it. Linda was clearly still thinking about the situation she had faced at Morrison's last Friday night. Very well, the judge said. Miss Malenkoff, I understand you have 2 witnesses who might have something to say about this. Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call Officer Maria Johnson to the stand. The officer stood up, sat in the witness chair, and took an oath. Lavaliere suddenly looked nervous. Officer Johnson, the prosecutor asked, on the night that you arrested Mr. Lewis, did he ask you to notice anything specific before you took him in? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Lewis asked me to check something he had placed under the windshield wiper of his damaged car. And what did you find? Miss Malenkoff asked. I found a check from Mr. Lewis made out to Mr. Lavaliere for $500. And what did you do with the check? I took a picture of it with my cell phone and put it back under the car's windshield wiper. And did you see the check again after that? Yes, Your Honor. As I was leaving Mr. Lavaliere's driveway, I saw him hold it out toward Mr. Lewis and tear it up. And where was Mrs. Lewis during this? She was next to Mr. Lavaliere watching him. Thank you, Officer Johnson. You may take your seat, the judge said. Then he turned to me and spoke. Mr. Lewis, you have been charged with violating Section 10853 VC of the Vehicle Code, damage to a vehicle. How do you plead? Guilty, Your Honor, I replied. Then, feeling a bit more confident, I added, with the court's permission, I would like to explain. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, but that will not be necessary. Your lawyer has done that for you, and this court is ready to pass sentence. He then looked between Derek and the prosecutor. Do I hear any objections? He asked. No, Your Honor. They both replied at the same time. Then, without objections, Mr. Lewis, you have pleaded guilty to violating Section 10853 VC of the Vehicle Code, damage to a vehicle. I accept your guilty plea, but will delay the sentence for 1 year, during which you will serve unsupervised probation. You are ordered to pay all court costs, as explained to your lawyer, and not to engage in any physical arguments with Mr. Lavaliere during your probation period. If you do not complete your probation successfully, I will end it, accept your guilty plea, and schedule a hearing for your sentence. However, if you complete your probation successfully, your guilty plea will change to not guilty. Your case will be dismissed, and the charge will be removed from your record. Do you understand, Mr. Lewis? Lewis? Before I could reply, Lavaliere stood up. You mean you won't even fine him or send him to jail? That's not right. Mr. Lavaliere, the judge said firmly, you will not use that kind of language in my court. As the victim, you are not part of these proceedings. You are a guest here. Honestly, I'm not even sure a crime happened. Although Mr. Lewis did not get permission to damage your car, it's not clear from the facts and the recording that he meant to cause any harm. Additionally, before causing the damage, he offered you to pay for the repairs, which was more than the cost of the damage, but you turned it down. He then looked at me and at Linda, who was hiding behind me. In this state, a person can use necessary force to protect themselves, their family, and their property. While it's true that one person can't be seen as property, marriage holds its own interests that are separate from each person involved. The standard for what level of force is reasonable depends on the situation. In this case, it's complicated because Mr. Lewis was in an unusual situation caused by his spouse and you, Mr. Lavaliere. These are the kinds of debates that come up in law school, but rarely in misdemeanor courts. Thankfully, we don't need to discuss that here. Mr. Lewis decided to plead guilty and leave the outcome to this court. The prosecution accepted Mr. Lewis's plea and suggested he receive time served. However, even this suggestion does not fully recognize the unique situation Mr. Lewis faced. If I may ask again, do you understand the sentence I have given, Mr. Lewis? Yes, Your Honor, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure if I understood. Do you believe you can stay out of trouble for a year, Mr. Lewis? Yes, Your Honor. Good. Then I hope I won't see you in this court again. Turning to the deputy, he added, Bailiff, please take Mr. Lavalier and Mrs. Lewis to the defendant's table. Derek and I walked out as Linda and Lavalier came in. I saw Lavalier's face was filled with anger and confusion. Linda looked embarrassed and close to tears. Mr. Lavalier and Mrs. Lewis, it's clear that both of you intended to mislead this court, the judge said. In ancient times, if someone lied in court, they could face the same punishment as the person they wronged. While that kind of rule wouldn't work today, I cannot allow such behavior in my courtroom. So I find you both in contempt and sentence you to 3 days in a county facility. I hope this time will help you think about treating others better. Before the bailiff could take them away, a scruffy, bald man from the back of the room stepped forward. Mr. Marcus Allen Lavalier, he said, handing him a large envelope. You've been served. He then turned to Linda, giving her another envelope. Miss Linda Lewis, he said. Linda looked at me, tears in her eyes. I could only shake my head. Things unfolded like a story. Before the next season began, Lavalier moved to Utah, feeling angry and bitter. His bright future had faded, and apart from a car dealership and a local furniture store, he had lost most of his endorsements. When I returned home from court, I started planning my life without Linda. Following my divorce lawyer's advice, I changed the locks on the house, contacted Linda's parents, and suggested she stay with them until we settled the divorce. In the divorce papers, I asked for joint custody of the kids, but wanted to keep them with me most of the time. Eventually, Linda agreed when I promised not to ask for child support. She tried to fight the divorce at first, but as things became well known, even her lawyer thought it was a lost cause. 7 months later, we were officially divorced. At her parents' suggestion, Linda moved to California to live with her sister and try for a fresh start. She visits 2 or 3 times a year, and I always make sure she can spend lots of time with the kids. I don't see the friends we used to hang out with very often. Linda stayed in touch with Dee for a while until Dee ran into Lavalier one weekend, which caused some trouble. Dave has filed for divorce too, but thankfully they don't have any children. As for me, the day my divorce was final, I gathered my courage, called Ellen, and asked her to dinner. Our date was wonderful, and it felt like we hadn't been apart for long at all. We started dating more often and grew closer until I couldn't wait any longer. After a sweet picnic by the lake at Meadowbrook Park, I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me, expecting her to say no. Instead, she hugged me tightly, filled with emotion. To this day, I'm not sure if she even said yes. When our wedding announcement appeared in the local paper, the head coach of her team, which was also Lavalier's old team, suggested she look for a job elsewhere. I guess they still held a bit of a grudge against me. Derek's skills came in handy again when he persuaded the human resources team that they should avoid another public legal problem. Instead, they offered Ellen a fair financial settlement, and she soon found a job as the cheerleading coach at our town's state university. 3 months later, we got married in a small chapel near the college. At first, the kids treated Ellen like a guest in our home, but as time went on, we started to feel more like a real family. About a year later, it became clear that she had truly been accepted by everyone. It was a Sunday evening, and we had just come back from a fun day at an amusement park a few hours away. School and work awaited us on Monday, and we all sighed as we prepared for the week ahead. Just before bedtime, Emma and Tommy marched into the living room, all cleaned up and in their pajamas. Emma, the big sister, spoke first as she stood tall. "Mom, Dad, this weekend was the best ever. Thank you for taking us to the park and for being together all weekend. We love you." With that, Emma climbed into my lap and Tommy went over to Ellen. After sweet hugs, they switched places and hugged us again. I glanced at Ellen and she had hidden her face in Emma's shirt, looking up with tears of joy in her eyes. "No, sweetheart, I should be thanking you. I'm so happy to be your mom. You are the best kids, and your dad is the greatest dad. I have never been this happy in my life." We embraced until the moment felt complete. Then the children scrambled down to sneak in a few more minutes of play before the weekend was over. I took the chance to stand up and pull Ellen to her feet. Holding her close, I looked down into her sparkling eyes. "And I want to thank you for being such a wonderful mom, and especially for being there for me at my most challenging time. I couldn't possibly love you more or feel more blessed to have you as my wife, dear." The small Ellen surprised me by hugging me back so tightly that I had a hard time catching my breath. "Jim," she asked, smiling up at me, "do you think it's too soon to start talking about having more kids?"